Chapter 288. Go to watch net. After Li Yundong finished speaking, Feng Na laughed and scolded him. Your mouth is really unforgiving. Can you stop the deputy mayor if he wants to come? By the way, this is a good job. You'll get extra points for the scholarship evaluation. Go to watch net. 7K. Don't shirk it. This is a political task. I just became the president of the student union. You have to support me in my work, right? Li Yundong laughed and said, Look, the first part is good, but the last part is showing your foxtail. Su Chan, who was not far away, heard the word fox. Her ears twitched, and she immediately ran over. What? Are you talking about me? Li Yundong slapped the girl on the forehead. Get out of the way. I'm not talking about you. Don't confess without being hit. Su Chan screamed, held her forehead, and ran 2 steps away. Then she made a face at Li Yundong. Only then did Feng Na notice Su Chan. She was shocked and asked, Su Chan is back? Li Yundong looked at Su Chan dotingly and said with a smile, Yeah. A hint of sadness flashed across Feng Na's eyes, but she soon smiled again. Hey, it's a promise. Remember it. Li Yundong smiled bitterly. Hey, you're forcing yourself on me. How can you be so domineering when you're the president of the student union? You're assigning political tasks to me. Feng Na giggled. Just tell me, are you going to help me or not? Li Yundong spread his hands. Can I not help you? You've already said so much. Feng Na slapped Li Yundong on the shoulder and said casually, Good, you're a good buddy. No wonder you're my idol. Just do your best. I have high hopes for you. After slapping Li Yundong, she shook her hand and said with a grimace, It hurts so much. Are you hiding iron on your body? Why does it hurt so much? Then, she waved her hand and prepared to leave. Li Yundong stopped her. Hey, what am I supposed to say then? Don't you have to tell me? Feng Na smacked her forehead. Don't worry, she said. I'll give you the script tomorrow morning. All you have to do is read it. She grabbed Li Yundong's arm and said in a serious tone, We can't let anything go wrong like last time. If something goes wrong, I'll be in trouble. Li Yundong gestured with his hand. Don't worry, there won't be any problems. Watch net. 7K. Feng Na smiled and said, Then I'll leave first. I'll see how you perform tomorrow. Just as Li Yundong returned to campus, Ziyuan and Wan Hongling also arrived at Mount Tianlong. However, the 2 of them did not dare to go to the mountain brazenly. Otherwise, they would confirm Zhou Ping's words and give others an excuse. Ziyuan asked Wan Hongling to wait at the foot of the mountain, while she secretly sneaked into the Fox Zen school. She saw that the disciples of the Fox Zen school were practicing and cultivating in an orderly manner. There was no depression or sadness after being seriously injured. Seeing this, Ziyuan sighed in her heart. No wonder the Fox Zen school has not been extinguished for thousands of years. It's not without reason. At this time, the Fox Zen school had gone through another big battle. Ao Wushuang had been sealed and taken away. The leader Lu Yi and Yi Yu had died in battle. The eldest Shiji, Mo Ashi, had been killed 9 years ago. It could be said that all the masters had been killed. Although the remaining seniors of the Fox Zen school had a high cultivation quotient, their Shintong and magic arts were very limited. They were far inferior to Ziyuan. In addition, many people had died in the battle of the Fox Zen school, so the Taoist temple seemed to be sparsely populated. Therefore, no one noticed Ziyuan sneaking into the Fox Zen school. After asking around, Ziyuan slipped out of the Fox Zen school and shook her head at Wan Hongling, who was greeting her at the foot of the mountain. He's not here. Let's go back to Tiannan City and have a look. After that, the 2 of them turned into a beam of blue light and left. However, Chao Yi and the others in the Fox Zen school had no idea that Ziyuan had already come and searched the entire Fox Zen school. At this moment, she was pacing back and forth in the backyard of the Taoist temple with a solemn expression. Her brows were furrowed with worry. Zhuang Yiting, Zhang Sunhong, and Lu Yuahong, who were passing by, saw her. Zhuang Yiting immediately smiled and said, 6th junior marshal sister is here. 6th junior marshal sister. What are you doing? When Chao Yi saw the 3 of them, she said with a smile. Ah, it's third Shiji. I'm not doing anything, but you three are together. What's the matter? In the Fox Zen school, eldest sister Emoashi was dead, and second senior brother Gufeng was also dead. Only Zhuang Yiting, who was ranked third, was now the most senior. She said, I couldn't find leader last night, and he left early this morning. I thought about it and felt uneasy, so I went to fourth junior sister Zhang Sunhong to discuss this matter. Coincidentally, fifth junior sister Lu Yuehong was also at her residence. She had the same worries as me, so the three of us discussed it and came to you. You are the most opinionated among us. We would like to hear your opinion. Chowie laughed and said, I happen to be worried about this matter. Shiji, please come in and have a seat. Watch net. 7K. OM. As she said this, she welcomed the three Shiji into the room. The layout of Chao Yi's room was not very different from that of Lu Yi, Ao Wushuang, and the others. However, Ao Wushuang and Lu Ye's rooms mostly used square tables and stools, while Chao Yi used round tables and stools. They scattered around the table and sat down. Chao Yi poured tea for them and said with a smile, I happened to be thinking about this matter before you Shiji came. Our Fox Zen school has gone through a great change. It can be said that our arms have been destroyed, and our legs have been crippled. We can be called useless. Although Ao Wushuang left the Fox Zen school 10 years ago, which greatly weakened the power of the school, we still have leader Lu Yi, Yi Yu, and eldest sister Emoashi to support us. Although we can't compare with the big sects, we are not weak. When the three Shiji heard this, they all nodded and sighed. Chowie continued, although most of us are six-tailed spiritual foxes, most of our magic skills are illusions, witchcraft and charm, which are useless in a fight. If we encounter a few hotheads who don't have a solid cultivation, it won't be a problem to seduce them. But if we encounter an orthodox xianmen like Zhang Tianhe, who is extremely strong in both mind and internal energy, then we will die. Not to mention other things. Now there is no need for the six great sects to come together. Even if only the Jinshan sect comes, we won't be able to handle it. We will have to run away with our tails between our legs. The three Shiji sighed together and said, Yes, yes. Among them, Zhuang Yiting, who was tall and had a neutral voice, said, Sixth Shimi, what do you think we should do now? The new leader doesn't seem to have much interest in succeeding the position of leader of the Fox Zen school. When he took over, he was in danger. I think it won't be long before he steps down. Chowie also sighed and said, That's what I'm worried about. Lu Yuehong also said, Yes, that's exactly what I'm worried about. Lu Yuehong was short, only about 1.55 meters tall, but her figure was petite and exquisite, and her appearance was charming. Her voice was even softer. She said, As a human being, Li Yundong taking over the position of leader of our Fox Zen school is a taboo in the cultivation world. I'm worried that he won't be able to stand the pressure of the major sects in the future, and will eventually give up on us. Zhuang Yiting said, Yes. At that time, if the major sects continue to put pressure on us with this matter, our Fox Zen school won't be able to withstand such pressure. Although Zhenrenli is good and strong, he is not as strong as so many sections. This time, only the cultivators of the younger generation came. What if their elders and masters come next time? How can we resist them? But if he doesn't become our sect leader, then any small sect will be able to bully us. This is really a dilemma. At this time, Chowie said, What you see is that if Li Yundong doesn't succeed as the leader of our Fox Zen school, we will be in danger of being destroyed. But what I see is that if he can continue to be the leader of our Fox Zen school, there will be hope and possibility for our school to prosper. The other three looked at her and asked, What's the difference between the two? Instead of answering, Chowie asked, Let's reach a consensus first. That is, do we want Zhenrenli to succeed as the leader of our Fox Zen school? The other three said in unison, Of course. Zhuang Yiting smiled and said, Zhenrenli is a rare cultivation master in recent years. He is young and promising, and he has a chivalrous heart. The most commendable thing is that he doesn't look down on us, because we are fox spirits. Lu Yuehong, who was standing to one side, said, I think the rarest thing is that he has true feelings for Su Chan, a disciple of our Fox Zen school. The two of them fell in love with each other, which is very commendable. At this time, Chow Yi sighed and said, we don't know whether this is a blessing or a curse for the time being. When Ao Wushuang and Wang Yuanshan, the leader of the Linggong sect, fell in love with each other, didn't they also make a lot of noise and cause the two sects to decline at the same time? Chow Yi suddenly changed the topic and said, since we all hope that Jimren Li will be our leader, what I want to say is that since ancient times, in the cultivation world, which sect has not become famous because of a certain genius? The Chuanjin dragon sect became famous all over the world because of Qiu Chuji. The immortal and Buddhist sects became widely known because of Wu Shouyang and Lu Huayang. And the Donghua sect became known all over the world because of Ning Chuanjin. Our Fox Zen school is also known to the world because of Ancestor Rock and the mystical silver fox. It can be seen that, except for the big sects like the Jingyi school, which have a deep foundation for thousands of years, if other small sects want to revitalize, the foundation lies in people. It depends on whether there is an amazing person who can carry forward their sect. Chow Yi said with confidence. Speaking of this, she suddenly paused and said word by word, I think Jimren Li is such an amazing person. Even compared with Qiu Chuji of the Chuanjin dragon sect, Wu Shouyang and Lu of the immortal and Buddhist sects, and Ning Chuanjin of the Donghua sect, he is not inferior. Zhuang Yiting, Lu Yuehang, and Zhang Sunhong hadn't expected Chow Yi to give Li Yundong such a high evaluation. But when they carefully imagined the scene of Li Yundong fighting with the major sects that day, they couldn't help nodding secretly. Lu Yuehang praised, yes, Jimren Li's talent in fighting is indeed extremely rare. Zhuang Yiting praised, I think that this person's will is firm and can be said to be rare in the world. It's really amazing that he can fight for a long time under the siege of all the major sects without a trace of fear. Even Zhang Sunhong, who had been silent, said, yes, Jimren Li's Naiden is powerful and condensed, and his Zhenqi is vast and majestic. He can be said to be unparalleled among the younger generation. Even compared with many of the older generation of cultivation, he is better than many people who have undeserved reputation. At this time, Chow Yi took over the topic and said, so, I am very optimistic about Li Yundong's future. Once he becomes one of the top great cultivators in the cultivation world, even if all the sects in the world want to deal with our Fox Zen school, we don't have to be afraid. The other three nodded in unison. Chow Yi suddenly changed her tone and said, but what I'm worried about is that although we really hope that Jimren Li can be our leader, I've dealt with him several times. His words and brows always reveal a feeling that our Fox Zen school is a big burden. Or, is there anything about our Fox Zen school that can attract him and make him continue to sit in the position of leader? As soon as she said this, the other three immediately looked at each other. If it had been someone else, they might have used a trick that had been tried and tested in the world. Charm him. Foxes were best at this trick. Otherwise, why would people call those coquettish women foxes? But if the target was Li Yundong, they wouldn't dare to do this no matter how much courage they had. Although these sly foxes had never set foot in the mortal world, they were not fools. Li Yundong was willing to challenge all the sects alone for Su Chan. He would rather be besieged than to put himself in danger. What kind of deep and firm feelings did he have for her? They were afraid that if they failed to charm him, they would be at a disadvantage and cause Li Yundong to be disgusted. If that happened, they would go for wool and come home shorn. Lu Yuehang thought for a moment and said, since he and Su Chan fall in love with each other, why not understand his feelings and move him with reason? Chow Yi said, I've also thought of this, but Su Chan has left our Fox Zen school since she was a child. We don't know how strong her sense of belonging to the sect is. Moreover, her master, Ao Wushuang, was taken away by Yen Fang. Needless to say, she is anxious. Whether she has the intention to let Li Yundong take care of us is unknown. These words made the others frown. Zhang Sunhong said, then what do you think we should do? Chow Yi smiled slightly and said something that would make Li Yundong vomit blood in the future when he thought of it. My wife has gone back to her parents' home to send her off. Sorry for updating late. In addition, Group 12345 is full. Please don't add it. Group 7 is now officially open to 10564874 people. Our fox Zen school may not be powerful in other kung fu, but we are definitely the best at escaping. If we make up our minds to run away, no one can catch up with us. Watch net. Chowie laughed. That's true. Shiji, you stay in the sect. We'll take the juniors down the mountain. After a private discussion, the big foxes came to the front hall of the Taoist temple and gathered the other 7 little foxes. When they told them that they were going down the mountain, the little foxes cheered and their eyes lit up. Are we going down the mountain? That's great. Can we finally go out and see the mortal world? Hooray! Seeing that the little foxes were so naughty, Chowie glared at them and shouted, How can you be so noisy? Only then did the little foxes quiet down again. They whispered to each other and chattered, their excitement evident on their faces. Hey! I heard that the people at the foot of the mountain are dressed so beautifully. Yes. I wonder what it's like at the foot of the mountain. But I don't have any good clothes. Oh, don't you have a very beautiful set of clothes? Just wear that one. Will that one work? Yes, I'm going to wear it too. Chowie sighed and said, If you keep quarreling, we'll go by ourselves. Only then did the little foxes shut up and stop talking. They all looked at Chowie eagerly. Chowie thought for a moment and deliberately said seriously, It's impossible for everyone to go this time. Someone must stay behind to guard the sect. If any of you is disobedient, I'll let her stay behind to guard the sect alone. When the little foxes heard this, they immediately fell silent. They all kept a straight face and looked straight ahead, like soldiers about to go to war. Seeing that Chowie had frightened the little foxes by playing the good cop, Zhang Sunhong laughed and said, Well, don't scare them. I'll take care of the sect. You can all go. The little foxes immediately cheered and surrounded Zhang Sunhong, chattering, Fourth Sherbois, you're the best. Chowie pretended to be angry and said, You only know how to praise Fourth Sherbois? Well, then you can go with her. The little foxes rushed toward Chowie again. Sixth Sherbois is also the best. Chowie scolded them with a smile. You're a group of fence-sitters. Listen up, this time you're not allowed to run around. If you're disobedient, don't come back in the future. In addition, go back now. We'll set off before dawn tomorrow morning and fly to Tiannan City. The little foxes asked curiously, Sixth Sherbois, why do we have to set off before dawn tomorrow morning? Yes, why do we have to fly? Isn't it better to take the train? I've never taken a train before. What are we going to do in Tiannan City? Why do we have to go there? I want to play somewhere else. Chowie was angry. Bastard, if you keep talking, none of you are allowed to go. Why do you want to take the train? Can any of you make a penny? The money was given by the leader, but you're still nagging. If you keep talking, you're not allowed to go. The little foxes stopped talking and looked at each other. After a long time, one of them raised her hand and said weakly, Sixth Sherbois, it seems that you haven't made a penny either, have you? Chowie was furious. She waved her sleeves and left. Go back, all of you. We'll set off tomorrow morning. The next morning, the big and small fox spirits set off from Mount Tianlong in a mighty manner before dawn. When the sky began to brighten, they flew to Tiannan City and began to land one after another. Watch net. After the group of fox spirits landed on the ground, they walked for a while before they arrived at the city. They looked around curiously at the various modern buildings in the city. For a moment, they were dazzled by the high-rise buildings made of reinforced concrete and the heavy traffic on the wide roads. The little foxes pointed at the passers-by and whispered to each other, Hey, they're dressed differently from us. Yeah, their clothes are so ugly. Our clothes are the best. That's right, that's right. I've heard of a term called what time. It's fashionable, idiot. Yes, what is fashionable? It's different from the masses. At this time, it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, the rush hour. The little foxes were self-righteously commenting on the passers-by on the side of the road, but they didn't feel that their clothes were strange at all, attracting the attention of passers-by. They were all wearing ancient dresses, very similar to what Su Chan had worn when she first came to Liyundong. The passers-by on the street were all stunned and thought to themselves, where did this group of beautiful women come from? Which crew is going to shoot a movie here? A driver saw the group of women in beautiful ancient dresses from afar, and his eyes immediately went wide. He didn't even look at the road, and directly caught up with the car in front of him. Then, one after another, cars rear-ended one after another. After the rear end of the car, the drivers got out of the car, but they didn't go to find trouble with the other party. Instead, they all stared at the group of fox spirits going down the mountain in astonishment. Needless to say, the fox spirits were gorgeous and beautiful. In the past, the appearance of one was enough to cause great waves in the human world. Not to mention the sudden appearance of so many fox spirits, and their costumes were so eye-catching. These fox spirits were all exquisite, beautiful and delicate. Even an old fox spirit like Chao Yi looked like a young girl in her 20s. Moreover, compared with these frightened little foxes, they were much more dignified, and there was a kind of enchanting charm in their reserved manner. As soon as this group of fox spirits appeared, the road was suddenly in a mess, and there were continuous car accidents. The pedestrians on the road stopped walking and stared at them. Some of the bolder ones went up to them and asked, "Are you going to shoot a movie?" Chao Yi and the others didn't speak, but the younger generation couldn't help but ask curiously, "What is a movie?" "Hey, do you know where our sect leader is?" "Yes, we're here to find him." When these people heard this, their expressions became strange. "Leader? What leader?" Chao Yi couldn't stand it anymore and said seriously, "Hello, do you know Li Yundong?" These people looked at each other. "Li Yundong? Who is he?" The little foxes were immediately displeased. In their opinion, Li Yundong, who had turned the tide and saved the Fox Zen school, should be the most famous person in the world. Seeing that these people didn't know Li Yundong, they shouted one after another, "You don't even know our leader. You're too ignorant. I won't talk to you anymore. You're so annoying. You don't know Li Yundong either. You've lived in vain." These passers-by felt wronged. They all thought to themselves, "Is Li Yundong a very popular star? It seems that I've been a little out of touch recently. Well, I have to go to cram." Thus, one of them asked sincerely, "Then who is this Li Yundong?" The little foxes were about to speak proudly, but Chao Yi glared at them and stopped them. She said seriously, "Do any of you know where Tian'an University is?" Some curious passers-by immediately said, "I know. I'll take you there." Chao Yi was afraid that she wouldn't be able to find the place, so she was delighted and smiled slightly. "Thank you." None of these fox spirits were not stunning beauties. Chao Yi's smile was even more charming, making the passers-by's bones feel a little lighter. They wished they could fly immediately. Some of the other men around them felt their hearts beat faster. Regardless of whether they had to go to work or other things, they also said, "I know. I'll take you there." After that, she led the group of fox spirits to Tian'an University. At first, there were only about 20 of them. But Chinese people were the most curious about good things. Some of them didn't know what was going on, so they came forward to take a look. As soon as they saw it, they couldn't take their eyes off it. They followed the group of fox spirits in a daze, whispering to each other as they walked. "Hey, what are you going to do?" "I don't know." F***CK. "Why are you following us if you don't know?" F***CK. "To see beautiful women." How many times can you see so many beautiful women in your life? That's true. But these beautiful women look like they're going to shoot a movie. I think so too. Maybe I can get an autograph later. Where are they going? Why are they walking so fast? You talk too much. They seem to be looking for a man named Li Yundong. That name sounds like a man. So many beautiful women are looking for a man? Could this man be the director? I guess so. Alas, so many beautiful women have been ruined by a director. Speaking of this, the men who were whispering to each other cursed in unison. Beast. This statement gradually spread among the followers of the fox spirits, So more and more people became curious. One after another, they cursed the beast and wondered what the beast looked like. The group of people slowly increased from more than 20 to more and more. In the end, there were hundreds of people like a tide, heading straight for Tiananmen University. The city leaders were coming to Tiananmen University that day, so the school gate had been closed early. The security guard at the school gate was shocked when he saw such a group of people rushing toward the school from afar. He thought to himself, "Oh my, are they going to riot?" When the little foxes at the front saw the school gate being closed from afar, they shouted, "Open the gate! Open the gate!" As soon as they shouted, the people behind them also shouted, "Open the gate! Open the gate!" The school security guard's face turned pale with fear. He would have dared to stop one or two people, but with so many people, who would dare to stop them? Besides, the gate was only half closed and not locked. It was too late to lock it at this time. Just as he was hesitating, the crowd had already arrived in front of him. They rushed past him like a torrent and rushed through the door. The crowd rushed in like a tide, causing the hat on his head to be tilted askew. He barely controlled his body so that he wouldn't be squeezed by the crowd. He grabbed a man and asked, "Hey, what are you doing? It's illegal to break into the school." The man who had been caught rolled his eyes. "Who wants to break into your stupid school? Do you think you're the municipal government? Hey, let me ask you, where is Li Yundong?" The school security guard was stunned. "Li Yundong?" The man immediately asked. "Do you know him?" The security guard slapped his thigh. "Of course I know him." The people around him said one after another, "This beast is really famous. Where is he? Where is he? Take us there." Almost at the same time, Chao Yi and the others also asked the students in the school, who were stunned by the scene, about Li Yundong's whereabouts. As soon as these students heard that they were looking for Li Yundong, they immediately shouted, "I know where Li Yundong is. Follow me." After that, the group of people turned around and headed for the school playground. Although it was time for the military training to end, many of the older students did not participate. Some of them heard the commotion and poked their heads out of the classroom. They immediately asked around curiously, and when they heard the commotion, they immediately laughed and joined the crowd. The crowd grew a lot bigger, and in an instant, there were about 800 or 900 people. They went straight to the school field in a grandiose manner. Please do not join the group repeatedly. Once you join the group, do not post any pictures related to politics. Thank you for your cooperation. Chapter 290. Go to watch net. Although this group of people was large, there were even more freshmen on the sports field of Tiananmen University. There were 2,000 to 3,000 students from more than a dozen faculties. When they surged to the edge of the sports field, although they attracted the attention of the freshmen on the sports field, they only thought that the older students were there to watch the fun, and did not think much of it. Watch net. Chao Yi and the others were at the forefront, looking for Li Yundong in the dense crowd on the playground. While they were looking, Lui Wahong suddenly pointed to a dignified boy standing in a row on the rostrum in front of the playground. She said, "Look, isn't that the leader?" When Chao Yi and the others saw this, they were overjoyed. The little fox spirits were about to shout, but Chao Yi quickly stopped them. She glared at them and said, "Don't shout. Let's figure out the situation first." The little foxes nodded and said, "Six Sherboy is right." At this time, Deputy Mayor Luo had already finished speaking on the rostrum. It was the principal's turn to speak. After the principal finished speaking, it was time for the new and old student representatives to speak. Li Yundong was standing on the rostrum with his eyes closed when he felt someone poking him. He opened his eyes and saw Feng Na winking at him and saying, "Hey, are you nervous?" Li Yundong couldn't help laughing. He had dealt with the siege of the major sections. What was this battle in front of him? Wasn't this a joke? Li Yundong smiled and said, "What's there to be nervous about?" Feng Na pursed her lips at Yan Hua, who was not far away, and said in a low voice, "Someone seems very nervous." Li Yundong took a look and saw that Yan Hua's thighs were trembling unconsciously. He was using his fingers to twist his thighs, staring straight ahead and muttering something. Li Yundong couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Why does this guy look like he's possessed by a ghost? Feng Na pursed her lips into a smile and said, Isn't it because you are giving him too much pressure? Li Yundong snorted and said, That's because he's too competitive. He likes to compete with everything. Feng Na whispered, Hey, I heard that Deputy Mayor Luo came to the school for an inspection because of him. This guy is a big shot, so it's understandable that he's a little nervous. Watch net. 7K. OM. As soon as she finished speaking, Deputy Mayor Luo walked up to him, patted him on the shoulder, and said kindly, Xiao Yan, don't be nervous. This is just a small matter for you. A dignified Zhuangyuan shouldn't have stage fright. Yan Hua was provoked by Deputy Mayor Luo and immediately said, What's there to be afraid of? Uncle Luo, you underestimate me. After that, his legs immediately stopped shaking, and his eyes were no longer empty. They became bright and full of spirit. He looked at Li Yundong with a belligerent look, full of provocation. Covering her mouth, Feng Na giggled. This guy still can't forget about suppressing you. Li Yundong rolled his eyes at Feng Na. Aren't you the one who fanned the flames? If you don't let me give the speech, this won't happen, right? Feng Na smiled and said, How can I do that? If you don't come out among the seniors, the others will be booed. Li Yundong said in a low voice, Hey, I'm telling you, this is the last time. I won't agree next time. Feng Na said with a disappointed look, Ah? Then won't you break the hearts of your fans and make them despair? Li Yundong scolded with a smile. Don't give me that. The two of them were talking and laughing, but suddenly, the principal had finished speaking. Yan Hua walked up to the rostrum with his chest puffed out, and began his speech loudly. Li Yundong and Feng Na saw that Yan Hua didn't have a piece of paper in his hand, so it was obvious that he was giving an impromptu speech. Feng Na smiled and said, Oh, he's the first one now. I was wondering what he was mumbling just now. It turns out that he was reciting the script. Li Yundong saw that Yan Hua's tone was rhythmic, and there was no stuttering between his words. He was indeed a natural speaker. He couldn't help but laugh and say, This guy seems to be running for president of the student union with you. His speech seems to be running for president of the student union. At this time, not only did Li Yundong hear it, but even Chao Yi and the others outside the playground could tell that something was wrong. Lu Yuehong saw that Yan Hua was full of passion and generosity, and that he was the hero of the world. She couldn't help frowning and asking, Shimmy, what is he talking about? Why am I a little confused? Chao Yi also frowned. She shook her head and said, I don't know. Let's go. However, a little fox spirit said carelessly, Oh, it's very simple. This is the major sex selection for the leader of the cultivation world. Look, two old men went up to talk, and then another one went up. I don't know who will go up next. She was talking nonsense, and the other fox spirits, who had never seen the world of cultivation, but didn't understand the world of mortals, nodded in unison. That makes sense. As the saying goes, public opinion can melt gold, and accumulated slander can wear away one's bones. Seeing that they were all saying the same thing, Chao Yi also began to waver and muttered, Is that really the case? At this time, Zhuang Yiting suddenly said, Hey, don't you think this person looks like Yan Fang? As soon as she said this, the others took a closer look, and were immediately shocked. They all said, Indeed. Chao Yi was even more shocked. She said, Could it be that the major sects are really running for the leader of the cultivation world? However, if the leader of the cultivation world doesn't fight, why should they compete with words? Why don't I see anyone from the other sects? Zhuang Yiting snorted coldly and said, These righteous people are the most insidious. Do you know what they are up to? No, we have to help our leader. The other foxes said one after another, How? Zhuang Yiting said, Our spiritual power is weak, so we can't help in a fight, but we can try our best to make trouble and stop this person from speaking. The other foxes laughed at the same time. Good, that's a good idea. However, as soon as they finished speaking, Yan Hua had already finished speaking. He bowed and stepped down from the stage. So neat that the foxes with evil intentions didn't even have a chance to do anything. All of a sudden, The fox spirits were dumbfounded. They looked at each other and said, "Oh no, he's finished. What should we do?" Yin Hua's speech was indeed wonderful. As long as one had ears and judgment, they would secretly praise him and give him a heartfelt applause. This young man was indeed talented in debating. His speech was endless, and he did not have stage fright at all. He immediately won a thunderous applause from the audience. After he left the stage, Deputy Mayor Luo patted him on the shoulder with relief. "Not bad, you didn't embarrass your old man." Yin Hua raised his head proudly. "Thank you for your praise, Uncle Luo." After that, he glanced at Li Yundong and said provocatively, "It's your turn to go on stage, Li Yundong." He emphasized the last three words. And Deputy Mayor Luo also felt the hostility in Yin Hua's heart. He looked at Li Yundong and immediately remembered that this was the boy who had teased his foreign friends at the exchange meeting at Tian'an University last time. He said with a fake smile, "It's you. Do your best." Li Yundong smiled at him, neither servile nor overbearing, and walked to the rostrum. He didn't take Yin Hua's provocation to heart, nor did he intend to compete with him. Therefore, he didn't intend to go off script, and still prepared to give a speech according to the script. When the three old foxes, Lu Yuehong, Chao Yi and Zhuang Yiting, saw Li Yundong on the stage, they immediately began to whisper to each other, "Oh, the leader has gone up. What should we do? We didn't help him just now, but we can't miss it this time." "Yes, but how should we help him?" Chao Yi thought for a moment and said, "Last time, the leader fought against the heroes, and we cheered from the side. I think this time we will be no exception. Let's cheer for the leader together." The fox spirits nodded one after another. "Okay, let's do that." After that, they were about to shout, but they opened their mouths and closed them again. They all turned around and said, "Sherbua, what should we shout?" "How?" Chao Yi thought for a moment and said, "It seems that mortals like to cheer?" Her voice was a little louder, and a female student next to her immediately said, "What error is it? Why are you still shouting this?" Chao Yi asked in confusion, "Then what should we shout?" When the girl saw that Chao Yi and the others were so beautiful, she secretly felt ashamed of her inferiority. Hearing their nonsense, she couldn't help but roll her eyes and sneer. "Now it's fashionable to call someone a bumpkin." The other little fox spirits said unhappily, "Who are you calling a bumpkin?" Chao Yi stopped them and said carelessly, "Thank you for your advice." The girl snorted and turned her face away, cursing in her heart, "A group of coquettish foxes." However, she hadn't expected that she was right. After Chao Yi and the other fox spirits unified their statements, they agreed to shout together. Li Yundong had just said on the rostrum, "Dear leaders, school teachers, students today." Before he could finish his words, he heard a loud shout coming from the playground. "Li Yundong at a bumpkin." This shout was loud and clear. It was so abrupt that it immediately attracted the attention of everyone on the playground to Chao Yi and the others. For a moment, the playground was extremely quiet. Not a single sound could be heard. Li Yundong, who was on the rostrum, found the voice familiar and looked in the direction of the voice. Even though Li Yundong's cultivation was profound and his willpower was strong, he couldn't help but shake and almost fall off the rostrum. He saw the fox spirits of the Fox Zen School dancing and shouting at him by the side of the sports ground. Li Yundong was dumbfounded. His eyes stared blankly, and he couldn't say a word. The freshmen on the playground and the onlookers on the sidelines couldn't help but laugh when they saw Li Yundong's expression, as if he had seen a ghost, and the group of vixens cheering excitedly. Some of the busybodies simply followed the fox spirits and shouted, "Li Yundong, add a bumpkin." As soon as they shouted, the others also followed suit. Li Yundong was already very popular at Tian'an University. This time, more than 2,000 freshmen on the sports field also laughed and followed suit. They shouted loudly, "Li Yundong, add oil to the sky." At this moment Li Yundong was going crazy. He felt as if the sky had turned dark at this moment. In the past, it had been enough to have Su Chan around to cause trouble. But now the whole Fox Zen School had come. This was the end of the world. Chapter 291. Go to watch net. Li Yundong looked at the noisy audience, and his face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He couldn't wait to rush off the stage and ask loudly to Chao Yi and the others, "Why are you here?" But he couldn't. There were thousands of people watching him, and he still had to finish reading his speech. Li Yundong coughed dryly. Just as he was about to open his mouth, he saw that the students under the stage had already burst into laughter. As soon as he opened his mouth, the sound coming from the microphone could not be heard. Go to WatchNet. 7K. OM. The school teachers on the rostrum looked at the scene below the field with their mouths agape. They had never thought that such a thing would happen. The principal, who was close to Deputy Mayor Luo, was sweating profusely. Deputy Mayor Luo said with a fake smile, "Well, Tiannan University is really lively and unique." This sentence made the school leaders sweat profusely. They wanted to rush off the stage to cover the mouths of every student. Although these teachers were flustered and exasperated, there was someone who was even more flustered and exasperated than them. This person was none other than Yan Hua. Yan Hua saw that his carefully prepared speech was no match for Li Yundong's silence, especially when he had invited Deputy Mayor Luo to cheer for him. In the end, the limelight had been stolen by Li Yundong. How could he not be angry? How could he not go crazy? Yan Hua's heart was bleeding with hatred. Seeing that the scene was in a mess, he kept saying in his heart, "Go ahead and make trouble. Let's see how you get off the stage." Seeing that the situation was getting out of hand, Li Yundong frowned, secretly mobilized his Jinqi, used the mantra Mahamudra Kung Fu, and said again, "Dear leaders, teachers, students, hello." As soon as he said that, he immediately suppressed the voices of everyone present. His words revealed a power that was not angry, but naturally dignified. It was like Vajra chanting, or Buddha chanting scriptures, causing everyone who heard it to unconsciously quiet down. For a moment, the chaotic playground immediately quieted down. Everyone looked up at Li Yundong on the rostrum and listened to him speak. Although the boy was reciting clichés according to the script, people felt that there was a sense of gentleness and reliability in his voice, which made people feel warm in their hearts. It was as if a force of vitality was growing in them. As the saying goes, the layman watches the fun, while the expert watches the technique. At this time, when Chao Yi and the others heard Li Yundong speaking with the mantra Mahamudra, they couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice, "Leader's cultivation is really pure. It's admirable." Just as she was sighing with emotion, she suddenly heard a low cry of surprise. "Sixth uncle, third uncle, fifth uncle, why are you all here?" Chao Yi and the others turned their heads and saw Su Chan pushing her way through the crowd towards them. WatchNet. 7K. OM. Chao Yi and the others were overjoyed to greet them. Just as they were about to recognize each other, they saw a beautiful woman with a cold temperament and a slim figure standing beside Su Chan. Chao Yi swallowed her words and just said with a smile, "Su Chan, you're here too?" Su Chan had heard someone jeering before and felt that the voice was very familiar. She pulled Zhou Qin over to see what was going on. As soon as she got closer, she found that the people jeering were none other than the sure boss of the Fox Zen school. She was immediately surprised and delighted. She said with a smile, "Are you here for Yundong?" Chao Yi nodded. Yes. Su Chan was a person who wanted to see the world in chaos. She didn't feel that there was anything wrong with Chao Yi and the others jeering just now. Instead, she clapped her hands and said with a smile, Good, good. Now that you're here, I'll have company." Zhou Qin, who was standing to one side, looked on coldly. She had heard a lot about the cultivation world from Su Chan before. And she also knew that Li Yundong had become the leader of the Fox Zen school and had become the leader of a group of fox spirits. She was both shocked and incredulous, but she had to believe it because all the facts were in front of her, and she couldn't refute them. Zhou Qin saw that the behavior of this group of fox spirits was contrary to common sense and was very ostentatious. She was worried that they would cause trouble for Li Yundong, so she said, "You will cause trouble for Master." Master, Chao Yi, Lu Yuehong, and Zhuang Yiting, the three old foxes, were immediately shocked, but the other younger foxes didn't notice this. Instead, they said with some jealousy, "Who are you? What right do you have to say this?" Su Chan, who was standing to one side, saw that both sides were a little angry, So she immediately became the peacemaker. She took Zhou Qin's hand and said, "Ah, I forgot to introduce her. This is Yundong's classmate, good friend, and eldest disciple Zhou Qin." Then, Su Chan introduced the disciples of Fox Zen School to Zhou Qin one by one. "These are my Shibua and Shiji." After she introduced them one by one, Zhou Qin greeted them one by one. Although she was polite, her face was always cold. There was not a trace of a smile on her face, giving people a feeling of arrogance. The juniors of the Fox Zen School did not pay much attention to Zhou Qin's identity, but they were very impressed by her cold face and lukewarm attitude. They were all unconvinced and muttered to themselves, "What's so great about her?" Strictly speaking, we can also be regarded as the disciples of the leader. However, Chao Yi and the others knew the weight of Zhou Qin's identity as a disciple. Chao Yi thought to herself, "In the future, if Li Yundong becomes a great grandmaster and wants to establish a sect, then Zhou Qin will be the first disciple and the pillar of the sect." For thousands of years, the first disciples of various sects have all been important figures in their sects, and they are also well known in the cultivation world. Watch net. 7K. OM. Even if Li Yundong did not dislike the Fox Zen School and continued to be the leader, Zhou Qin would still be his direct descendant. Li Yundong's voice and will would need to be conveyed through Zhou Qin. None of his fox spirits could fight. Obviously, Li Yundong wanted to cultivate a personal disciple to help him in the future. The cultivation world was the same as the martial arts world. For a master, accepting a disciple was more important than giving birth to a child. Both were for the sake of carrying on the family line. Having a disciple was equivalent to having a son. Sometimes, a master was even closer to his disciple than to his son. This was because no matter how good a person was at fighting, it was impossible for him to do everything by himself. Therefore, he had to accept a disciple and let the disciple help him. However, the disciple could not lose on the battlefield. Otherwise, others would say that the kung fu of this sect was useless. Therefore, the older generation was extremely strict in accepting disciples. However, once they found a good seedling, they would immediately regard him as their own son and teach him the best things. Not only did they expect him to carry forward the sect, but they also expected him to support them in their old age. Although the cultivation world was not like the martial arts world, the principle was roughly the same. Moreover, the rules for accepting disciples were 100 times stricter than in the martial arts world. Seeing that Li Yundong had already accepted a disciple at such a young age, Chao Yi couldn't help but mutter in her heart, "This woman is so young and beautiful. I wonder if the leader can teach her well. Did he take a fancy to her appearance and accept her as a disciple? If so, don't delay the leader's cultivation." Among the older generation of the Fox Zen School, Chao Yi was more scheming. She took the initiative to shake hands with Zhou Qin with a smile. Taking advantage of the opportunity, she carefully looked Zhou Qin up and down. Chao Yi was suddenly shocked. She saw that Zhou Qin was not only beautiful, but there was also a compelling heroic spirit between her eyebrows. Moreover, there were hidden edges between her eyebrows, and her eyes were extremely sharp. Obviously, she was a person who was determined to kill. Most importantly, she took advantage of the opportunity of shaking hands to explore Zhou Qin's body with her yuanqi. She immediately found that this woman was not only an extremely rare Xianin maiden furnace, but also a strong yuanyang qi was faintly revealed in her extreme yin constitution. This shock was no small matter. It was best for a man to cultivate with a child's young body, but the most difficult part of cultivating with a child's young body was to cultivate the extreme yin qi and the extreme yang. Women themselves had 5 leakage bodies, so it was 100 times more difficult for them to cultivate than men. Moreover, it was extremely difficult to cultivate the extreme yang qi with the virginine body. Before the major sects besieged the Fox Zen School, there had been dozens of disciples in the Fox Zen School. Only Yi Yu and Ao Wushuang could cultivate the extreme yang qi from the extreme yin qi, including Mo Ashi, who had died long ago. The reason why they couldn't fight was that they hadn't cultivated the extreme yin qi into the extreme yang qi. But the woman in front of them was not only a Xianin maiden furnace, but also had the extreme yin qi in her body, as well as the yuanyang jin qi. This was equivalent to a female inner disciple cultivating hard, for more than 10 years, to make up for Zhou Qin's lack of cultivation. Qiaoyi took a deep breath and thought to herself, she was born to be a cultivator. Such talent is really hard to come by in 100 years. If the cultivators of other sects saw her, I'm afraid they would fight for her. Where did the leader find such a piece of unpolished jade? He's really lucky. As long as she cultivates a little, she will immediately become a good cultivator, who can fight and fight. In the cultivation world, finding a good disciple is more important than finding a good powerful magical weapon. As the saying goes, powerful magical weapons are easy to find, but good disciples are hard to come by. At this time, Qiao Yi's impression of Zhou Qin had changed greatly, and she no longer dared to look down on her. She knew that although the cultivation of the woman in front of her was far inferior to hers at this time, she would definitely surpass her in the future. Moreover, she and the leader were both disciples and friends. Qiao Yi couldn't stop her, so it was better to help her go. Especially when Qiao Yi thought that after Zhou Qin's cultivation was successful in the future, the Fox Zen school would have 2 pillars, and they would no longer have to worry about being bullied. She couldn't help laughing. Qiao Yi held Zhou Qin's hand and said very intimately, "It turns out that you're a disciple of the leader. What a coincidence to meet you here today. I'll call you Shirji, but I don't have any gifts for you today." As she said this, she took off a jade bracelet from her wrist and put it on Zhou Qin's wrist. "Come on. This is a little token of my appreciation." At a glance, Zhou Qin could see that the jade bracelet was of pure texture, and there was a warmth in the green color. At first glance, she could tell that it had been worn for a long time. It must be a very valuable treasure. She quickly refused and said, No, I can't accept a reward without doing anything. I should be the one to greet you, Shirbois." At this time, Lu Yuehang and Zhuang Yiting also came to their senses, and enthusiastically came up to Zhou Qin to get close to her, which made the little foxes roll their eyes. Even Su Chan was a little jealous. "Shirbois, you've never been so enthusiastic to me before." While they were chatting below the playground, Yan Hua, who was on the stage, was furious. He saw that as soon as Li Yundong spoke, the noisy playground quieted down. It was as if he could summon the wind and rain. He was gnashing his teeth when he glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw a circuit board at his feet, which was connected to the power of the microphone. Yanhua's heart skipped a beat, and he quietly kicked off the power with his foot without changing his expression. With a buzzing sound, a sharp and harsh buzzing sound came from the school playground, and the work immediately stopped. Whether it was the students, teachers, or the crowd who had come to watch the fun, when they heard the sound, they immediately covered their ears and grimaced. Although they had covered their ears, and the loudspeaker on the school playground had run out of power, Li Yundong continued to read the script as if he hadn't heard it. His voice was still clearly transmitted to the ears of everyone present. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously let go of their hands. Sure enough, they heard Li Yundong's voice still ringing in their ears calmly, as clear as a whisper. They covered their ears again, but Li Yundong's voice did not weaken in the slightest. It just became a little distant, as if he was a preacher reciting scriptures on a distant mountain. Li Yundong's careless display of skill stunned everyone present. It was not something an ordinary person could do without a microphone and a loudspeaker on such a large sports ground. Thousands of people in the audience could hear him clearly. That was not something an ordinary person could do. This kind of kung fu seemed easy and ordinary, but even the stupidest and most inexperienced person knew how amazing it was. Suddenly, some people who had come to watch the fun outside the playground couldn't help but secretly cheer in their hearts. At this time, the playground was even quieter than before. Everyone listened to Li Yundong's speech attentively. They didn't want to pay attention to what Li Yundong was reading. They only felt that listening to the boy's voice was like drinking a bowl of hot soup, warm and comfortable in their hearts. Not long after, Li Yundong finished reading the script in his hand. As usual, he bowed and stepped down from the stage. When he left the stage, the crowd outside the sports field let out a long suppressed cheer. Then the whole sports field burst into thunderous applause, and the cheers shook the sky. Chao Yi and the others also applauded and shouted in admiration, and the little fox spirits, led by Su Chan, screamed loudly, "Li Yundong, add more fuel to the fire." But their voices were like small stones in the midst of the applause and cheers that were like raging waves, disappearing after making a splash. Yanhua watched Li Yundong walk off the stage with jealousy and hatred in his heart. He couldn't imagine that Li Yundong would be able to control the situation in such a situation. Everything he had done before had become a foil for this boy. Am I born to be a foil for this boy? Yanhua roared in his heart. No, it's impossible. I have always been first. I will never lose to him. Yanhua was furious. While no one was paying attention, he gritted his teeth, turned around, and plugged in the power supply. Then he rushed to the rostrum, grabbed the microphone, pointed at Li Yundong and shouted, "Li Yundong, do you dare to discuss the law with me in front of so many people?" Chapter 292. Go to watch net. The commotion caused by Li Yundong's speech on the stage had already given the school leaders a headache. But what was even more troublesome was that the top scorer in the city had actually provoked Li Yundong on such an important occasion. Go to watch net. 7K. OM. Colorful. Text. Learn net. Super_speed. More. New. The school leaders all cursed in their hearts. Children nowadays are really becoming more and more unscrupulous and self-centered. How can they speak and do things completely regardless of the occasion? The vice president suppressed his anger and said to Yanhua, "Yanhua, pay attention to the occasion." However, Yanhua acted as if he hadn't heard him and just looked at Deputy Mayor Luo. Deputy Mayor Luo hadn't expected that his attendance at the military training graduation ceremony of Tiannan University would cause such a thing. He sighed in his heart that the son of the Yin family was really competitive, but at the same time, he was very worried and didn't know whether he should help him or not. But this hesitation only lasted for a moment. Soon, there was a storm of shouting under the playground. "Agree to it, agree to it." The students on the playground were extremely excited, especially the freshmen. They had never expected that the university they had been admitted to would have such exciting, fun, and lively things over and over again. Well, it seemed that college life would not be lonely and boring. In any case, it was better for them to die than for themselves. Watching the fun, the freshmen started to make a ruckus. Even Su Chan, Chao Yi, and the others were shouting for Li Yundong to take on Yanhua's provocation. Chao Yi frowned and sneered. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, if someone gets stage fright in front of everyone, the reputation of the leader will plummet. Su Chan also nodded hard. In her opinion, Li Yundong would definitely be able to defeat this annoying guy, no matter what. However, Zhou Qin looked up at Li Yundong on the rostrum, feeling a little worried in her heart. Li Yundong saw that the students under the stage were making a ruckus, just like what had happened in the small auditorium. He couldn't help but feel a headache coming. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a roar from the side. Li Yundong agreed to it. Don't be afraid of him. Li Yundong turned his head and saw Feng Na waving her arms and shouting, as if she wanted the world to be in chaos. He immediately glared at Feng Na, but Feng Na stuck out her tongue and turned her face away. Li Yundong looked at Feng Na. Li Yundong was in a difficult position at this time. He was not a timid person, so he asked coldly, "How do you want to discuss the law?" The school leaders had hoped that Li Yundong would remain calm and not argue with Yanhua. But who would have thought that both of them were young and aggressive? Neither of them was willing to submit to the other. In front of so many people, who would be willing to bow their heads? Seeing that the situation was not good, the vice president immediately wanted to rush over and ask someone to turn off the power of the microphone. But at this time, Deputy Mayor Luo suddenly smiled and said, "The school spirit of Tiannan University is very lively. It reminds me of the time when I argued with others about a topic. Good, good. Young people should have this kind of spirit." This sentence sealed the coffin. The other teachers were dumbfounded. They weren't stupid. Who couldn't tell that this sentence was indirectly supporting these two students to have a PK here? At this time, The teachers were not in a hurry. Anyway, if the sky fell down, there would be someone taller to hold it up. There was a show in front of them. So they just watched the show. With the support, Yanhua immediately became courageous. He said loudly, "Do you dare to debate Buddhism with me here in front of thousands of teachers and students?" These days, Li Yundong had read through the classics of Buddhism and Taoism. He was no longer the ignorant young man he used to be. Although he didn't dare to say that he was well-versed in the classics, he could still explain the Buddhist Dharma and Taoist Dharma clearly and logically. Go to the internet. 7K. OM. Seeing Yanhua's arrogance, Li Yundong was angry and said, "Why wouldn't I dare?" Yanhua sneered and said, "But I want to set a rule for the discussion." Li Yundong sneered and said, "What rule?" In front of the microphone, Yanhua pointed to the thousands of students under the playground and said loudly, "There are thousands of people here, and almost 99% of them support you. Whatever you say, they will cheer and agree. If I argue with you like this, I will be at a disadvantage." Before he could finish his words, the students on the playground had already started booing him. Someone even shouted, "If you have the ability, you can also be so popular." Li Yundong snorted and said, "Haven't you heard of the saying? Although there are thousands of people, I will go forward. Since you don't have such courage, why do you have to challenge me in front of so many people?" Between the two of them, one was holding a microphone and was being booed by the audience. Many people couldn't hear what he was saying, while the other didn't need a microphone to speak. As soon as he opened his mouth, everyone on and off the field could hear what he was saying no matter how noisy it was. In comparison, there was no need to argue about the Dharma. The students under the stage started booing Yanhua. However, Yanhua's expression didn't change. He said eloquently, "Even Buddha doesn't dare to go against the will of the common people. He has to take off the gorgeous clothes of a prince and put on the same clothes as a beggar. He has to walk on the street and mingle with the common people. Only in this way can he spread his Dharma." It can be seen that the will of the people is irreversible, and even Buddha is no exception. Even Sakyamuni is like this. How can I think that I am better than him? Li Yundong frowned and said, "Then what do you want?" Yanhua pointed to the playground below and said loudly, "It's very simple. Even if the people below don't help either side, they have long been inclined to you in their hearts. No matter what I say, they will not cheer for you. No matter what you say, they will cheer for you. Go to the internet." 7K. OM. So, in order to discuss the Dharma fairly, if you want them to oppose you, they will oppose whatever you say. Li Yundong sneered disdainfully in his heart. Before he had time to speak, the students below the stage began to clamor again and shouted, "F*CKU, can you be more shameless?" That's right. You might as well say that Li Yundong is not allowed to speak, and only you are allowed to speak. However, Yanhua still said with a straight face, "You think that I am shameless and shameless, but have you ever thought about how much pressure you are putting on me by supporting one person like this?" Immediately someone shouted, "If you are under pressure, why are you jumping out? Get out of here." Someone else shouted, "Li Yundong is not afraid of this kind of pressure." Yanhua deliberately pretended not to hear some of the curses, and immediately seized on one of the people's words. He said loudly, "Li Yundong is also afraid of this kind of pressure. If you don't believe me, you can try it later." No one can remain calm in the midst of all the boos. I bet that he won't be able to finish his sentence later. Yanhua's words caused a stir in the crowd below the stage, and the students began to whisper to each other. Chowie also frowned and said in a low voice, "This is a trap. Leader, don't jump into it." Su Chan was not worried about this. In her opinion, Li Yundong would definitely win, but she was very curious about Yanhua's words. She asked, "Will Yundong be unable to finish his sentence later?" Chowie smiled and said, "Leader, you are fearless even when fighting with the young masters of the major sections. How can you be afraid of this kind of verbal battle?" However, Su Chan's eyes were rolling, and she was extremely curious. After Yanhua finished speaking on the rostrum, he turned to Li Yundong and said, "Do you dare to promise me?" Li Yundong thought to himself, "I have seen much more powerful battles than this. Why would I be afraid of this? What a joke. He said proudly. Why wouldn't I dare? Yanhua nodded, then turned to the people on the playground and said, since Li Yundong has agreed, you can boo him and oppose him when you see him. Let's see if he can remain calm under your boos. Most of the students on the playground ignored him, and only a few of them shouted, okay. Yanhua didn't care so much. He turned his head and said to Li Yundong, so Li Yundong, I'm debating with you about the Dharma. Do you want to ask first or do I want to? Li Yundong said. Is there any difference between you and me? Yanhua said loudly. Of course there is a difference. Heaven, earth, the sun, and the moon have a front and a back. There is an order of seniority. There is naturally a big difference between asking first and asking second. Li Yundong saw that although the other party was asking who would ask first, there was a hidden meaning in his words, which implied the Dharma. He knew that the other party had already begun to discuss the Dharma. Li Yundong said, since you said that heaven, earth, the sun, and the moon have a front and a back, may I ask which one is first, the sun or the moon? Although the quality of the students under the playground was not uniform, most of them had been admitted to the university after hard work. They were not stupid. As soon as they heard this, they knew that Li Yundong and Yanhua were already competing with each other. Immediately, they all listened to the debate between the two of them with rapt attention. Some people didn't understand what they were talking about, so they asked the people around them in a low voice, what do they mean? Immediately, someone explained in a low voice, Yanhua is seizing the initiative in the debate. Whoever seizes the initiative first can control the direction of the debate topic, control or influence the other party's thinking, and let the other party follow their own thinking. Then how can Yanhua take it? Didn't you see who asked first? Then he used this point to put forward the principle that heaven, earth, the sun, and the moon have a front and a back, and that there is an order of seniority. This is equivalent to starting an argument in the debate and throwing out an argument. Then Li Yundong must refute his argument, otherwise, he will fall into a passive position. Then how does Li Yundong refute it? Li Yundong is very cunning. He secretly changed the concept and asked the other party whether the moon appeared first or the sun appeared first. If Yanhua says that the sun appeared first, then Li Yundong can refute that according to the visual distance, the moon is much closer to us, so it is obviously in front. Then what if Yanhua says that the moon appeared first? Then Li Yundong can say that according to the sky, the sun appeared far earlier than the moon, so it should be the sun that appeared first. Damn, isn't that a dilemma? No matter how you answer it, it's wrong. Yes, that's why I said that Li Yundong is very cunning. There is a trap in his words. Hey, who do you support? I originally wanted to support Li Yundong, but according to the rules of their debate, I have to support Yanhua. Wow, no way, you actually support Yanhua. Nonsense, if I don't support him, when he loses the debate, he will blame it on us. Humph. I want Yanhua to lose wholeheartedly. Well, that makes sense. The students below the stage whispered to each other, while the debate between Li Yundong and Yanhua on the stage was going on fiercely. In the face of Yanhua's aggressive question, Li Yundong avoided the strong points and threw out a trap question. However, Yanhua was not an ordinary person. He saw through the deep trap in Li Yundong's words at a glance. He didn't take the bait and also asked in return, then I want to ask you which came first, Buddha or man? This question immediately moved Li Yundong, Chao Yi, and the other cultivators. Although Su Chan had cultivated with Ao Wushuang in the mountains since she was a child and mostly practiced Taoist magic, she had also read a lot of Buddhist classics. She opened her mouth and said in surprise, this guy is so powerful. How should I answer this question? Although Zhou Qin could sense that there was a trap in Yanhua's words, she didn't know where the trap was and how powerful this sentence was. She immediately asked Su Chan, what's wrong with this sentence? Su Chan knew that although Zhou Qin was intelligent, she knew nothing about Buddhist principles and Dharma. She explained, this sentence is a rhetorical question from Yundong. He asks whether the sun or the moon came first, and whether Buddha or man came first. Zhou Qin nodded. I understand this, but how should I answer it? Shouldn't man come first, and then Buddha come? Human beings came first, and then Sakyamuni. Isn't this a very obvious question? Suchan shook her head. No matter how you answer it, it won't work. If you say that man came first, then you will fall into his trap. He can say that Buddha once said that man is Buddha, and Buddha is man. Man is Buddha in the future, and Buddha is man in the past. Since Buddha said that man himself is Buddha, why do you say that man is in front and Buddha is behind? Zhou frowned and said, what if Buddha is in front and man is behind? Suchan said, that's even more against the most basic principle. When humans first start to evolve, they are no different from beasts. At that time, people don't understand etiquette and shame at all, let alone the root of Buddhism and wisdom. Yanhua can refute you from a biological point of view. Zhou asked again, what if I said that Buddha and man exist at the same time? Suchan shook her head and said, no, the proposition that Yanhua put forward before is that the sun and the moon have a sequence, which means that there must be a sequence, and they can't coexist at the same time. At this time, it seems that we are talking about Buddha and man, but in fact, we are still debating whether the sun or the moon came first. If you say that Buddha and man appeared at the same time, it is tantamount to surrendering and admitting that your previous argument is untenable, which means that you have lost. Hearing this, Zhou gasped and said, then how can we refute this sentence? Suchan looked at Li Yundong on the rostrum with a worried face and said, I don't know either. Chao Yi, who was standing to one side, said with a solemn face, this person doesn't look like a cultivator. If it's a battle of magic, leader can crush him with one finger. But if it's a battle of magic, this person is a strong opponent of leader. / 7854627895541. Chapter 293. Go to watch net. Seeing that Yanhua's question was so tricky, Zhou couldn't help frowning and saying, then shouldn't Li Yundong debate with him in front of everyone? Chao Yi, Zhuang Yiting, and Lu Yuehong said in unison, no. Chao Yi said, although the scene in front of us has nothing to do with fighting, if it gets out and people from other sects hear that our leader lost to a student who is not a cultivator, how will they look at our leader? How will our leader gain a foothold in the cultivation world? Hearing this, Zhou stopped talking and looked at the rostrum with a worried face. Go to watch net. When Li Yundong heard Yanhua's words, he was also shocked and began to look at the opponent in front of him again. He knew that this question was tricky and could not be answered directly. After pondering for a while, he said, you asked me whether Buddha or man came first. Then let me ask you, which one do you think came first, the chicken or the egg? This question caused an uproar among the students in the playground. Many people burst into laughter, cheering for Li Yundong's cunning response and shameless rhetorical question. Whether Buddha or man came first, and whether the chicken or the egg came first, these were all unsolvable questions. Li Yundong cleverly avoided the important and focused on the trivial, blocking the other party's question with a rhetorical question. Suchan even laughed and said, wonderful, why didn't I think of that? Zhou also smiled slightly and said with respect and admiration, sly. Yanhua saw that his question had not stumped Li Yundong. If he asked another question, it would be meaningless. Moreover, he didn't expect that his questions would be able to knock Li Yundong down. He said loudly, the body is a Bodhi tree, and the heart is like a mirror. Always wipe the Buddha diligently, and don't let dust stir up. What do you mean by that? Li Yundong immediately said without thinking, always take care of your mind and state of mind. Through continuous cultivation, you can resist the temptation of the outside world and all kinds of evil spirits. This is a kind of mentality that emphasizes the role of cultivation. It is the cultivation philosophy of the eminent monk Shinshio. After Li Yundong finished speaking, he immediately asked loudly, there is no Bodhi tree, and the mirror is not a mirror. There is nothing, so where does dust stir up? What do you mean? Yanhua immediately said, this is 6th Patriarch Huineng's Gatha. It says that there are not so many troubles in the world. So why do we have to rub the mirror of clarity in our hearts every day? Zhou Qin watched as the two of them asked each other about the two classic Buddhist verses. She was very familiar with them, but she didn't know why they were asking such questions. She asked Su Chan again, "What are they talking about now?" Su Chan said, "Just now, the two of them were testing each other's reaction and agility. Now they are testing each other's theoretical foundation of Buddhism." These two hymns were written by two disciples of the fifth ancestor Hongren, of the Zen sect of Buddhism. Yanhua asked about the hymn written by Shinsu, while Li Yundong asked about the hymn written by the sixth ancestor Huaining. Watch net. Later, because of these two poems, the Buddhist Zen sects split into the north and the south. They represent two different approaches to cultivation. Zhou Qin nodded and stopped talking, continuing to look up at the field. After Li Yundong and Yanhua tested each other's thinking reaction and Buddhist foundation, they finally stopped testing each other and directly engaged in close combat. Yanhua said loudly, "There is a saying in the first volume of Mahaprajnaparamita. Different emptiness without form, different emptiness without form. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. Please explain what form is." Li Yundong immediately said, "The four elements are all emptiness, and the five skandhas are not there. But because all the dharmas have gathered into this body, although the form of form comes and goes back and forth, it evolves into millions of ends and forms the boundless world. Therefore, in the final analysis, form is one." Yanhua said again, "If the form is one, then please explain what is emptiness." Li Yundong said, "Form is not its own form. It arises from cause and effect, so it returns to one. Emptiness is not a vacuum, but the great treasury of the void. If we talk about its origin, it also returns to one. This is the principle of all dharmas returning to one." Yanhua immediately asked, "Then where does all dharmas return to one?" Li Yundong laughed and said, "All dharmas return to one. One is still one." Yanhua saw that he couldn't answer Li Yundong's questions, so he was unwilling to give up and asked again, "What is the eyeless method?" Li Yundong replied casually, "I hate to see flowers growing together when the curtain is closed, and I fear to see swallows perching on a high building." Yanhua asked again, "What is the earless technique?" Li Yundong said, "Don't teach the flute to frighten the willows. Don't teach the flute to provoke the phoenix." Yanhua asked again, "What is the noseless technique?" Li Yundong immediately said, "The orchid is not stained by the king's aura, and the daylily is not stained by the fragrance of a girl. What is the tongueless art?" "Fortunately, I did not plunder the black prison. Why are you spitting out green lotus?" "What is peerless body art?" "Accustomed to moving the unclean to the west, cursing the unruly Chun to learn from Xiaolian." "What is the unintentional method?" "Only for the sake of love to become a minor tribulation, but because it does not hinder the spiritual platform." Yanhua fired off a barrage of questions, and Li Yundong answered them without pause. The two of them fought back and forth like soldiers engaged in hand-to-hand combat, causing the students on the sports ground to burst into cheers. Watch net. Even the teachers who had been unhappy before nodded secretly at this time, feeling admiration for the two young people on the rostrum, who dared to debate the Dharma in public in front of thousands of people. Chao Yi Su Chan and the other cultivators were even more impressed. Chao Yi nodded and said, "This boy's previous questions were very tricky. If it were me, I might not have been able to answer them." Lu Yueheng praised, "It's rare that the leader is so young, but he has also studied the Dharma so well. Amazing, really amazing." Zhuang Yiting said, "The young man who argued with the leader is also very good, but I don't know what his relationship with Yanfang is." Most of the students didn't understand the meaning of the debate between Li Yundong and Yanhua, but the experts could see the artistry, while the laymen could just watch the fun. They only felt that the battle between Li Yundong and Yanhua was very fierce. It didn't matter whether they understood it or not. But in terms of the initiative, it seemed that Yanhua had the initiative, but in terms of momentum, Li Yundong was able to block soldiers with arms and water with earth. His words and actions were really full of spirit and spirit. At this time, many students on the playground couldn't help but cheer for Li Yundong. But as soon as they started to cheer, some people stopped them and said, You're silly. You can't cheer for Li Yundong, or Yanhua will go back on his word. You should cheer and oppose him. This is the support for Li Yundong. Only then did they remember what Yanhua had said before. They all laughed and said, "Isn't that simple?" For a moment, many people on the field began to cheer. At first, there were only a few, but gradually, more and more people began to cheer. Some people didn't understand, so they asked for the reason. After hearing the explanation, they suddenly laughed and said, "So that's how it is. Well, it's good to make him admit his defeat." Su Chan and the others, who were standing next to the playground, were shocked to see more and more people start to boo Li Yundong. But when they asked for the reason, they all laughed. Su Chan was a mischievous girl and liked to play with Li Yundong the most. Thinking that she hadn't ruined Li Yundong's show in public, she suddenly felt that this matter was novel and exciting. She immediately clapped her hands and said, Okay, let's shout together." After that, she shouted as if she wanted the world to be in chaos. The foxes of the younger generation of the Fox Zen school seemed to follow Su Chan's lead. Seeing her shout, they also shouted. Although Chao Yi and the others felt that something was wrong, they couldn't tell what was wrong. The little foxes had never expected that it would cause a beauty effect. Many of the men who had come to watch the fun heard them shout, and immediately followed suit. At first, these people had been cheering to help Li Yundong, but they hadn't expected that people not only had herd mentality, but also had compassion. Some people saw that Li Yundong was extremely strong on the stage and shone brightly, so they couldn't help but begin to sympathize with Yanhua. Some people simply turned it into reality and began to cheer for Li Yundong. At this time, as soon as Li Yundong opened his mouth on the stage, there would be thunderous boos and boos from the audience. No matter how powerful his jinqi was and how high his cultivation was, it was extremely difficult for him to compete with the noise of every word he said. In particular, he could vaguely hear the sound of girls booing. Li Yundong looked in the direction of the voice and saw Su Chan and a group of little foxes booing. Li Yundong suddenly became angry. He was so angry in his heart. "It's fine if these people booed me, but why are you also booing me? How dare you help an outsider?" At this time, Yanhua found that Li Yundong's thinking had begun to be unable to keep up with him, especially when his face darkened and his eyes kept sweeping down the stage. He was overjoyed and said proudly, "Now do you know what it feels like to be booed and cheered by everyone?" Li Yundong's face turned blue. He found that he had fallen into Yanhua's trap. As a cultivator, he was strong-willed, but it was too difficult for him to think without any hindrance in the midst of thousands of people's objections and boos. Especially Su Chan, the little girl, who was foolishly joining in the uproar. She didn't realize at all that they had fallen into Yanhua's trap. Li Yundong snorted coldly and argued with Yanhua. But now the mentality of most of the students had completely changed. They only felt that booing Li Yundong, a legendary figure in the school, was very fun and exciting. The rebellious mentality defeated the mentality of worshipping the strong. Many people began to look forward to Li Yundong's reaction after he failed in the discussion. As soon as Li Yundong opened his mouth, there was a burst of booing from the audience. Every time he threw out an argument, the audience said in unison, "Objection, objection." When Li Yundong refuted Yanhua's point of view, they encouraged Yanhua. "Agree, agree." Even if Li Yundong had great ability, it was impossible for him to play in this situation without any hindrance. He couldn't help but say angrily to the students under the playground, "Hey, you guys are making a lot of noise." Seeing that Li Yundong finally couldn't help it, the students under the stage burst out laughing. They were proud and happy, as if they had done a great prank. Li Yundong said loudly, "Do you agree with whatever I object to, and oppose whatever I agree with?" The students under the stage laughed and said, "Yes." Li Yundong turned his face to Yanhua and said, "As long as I can make these guys unable to oppose me, I will win this discussion, right?" At this time, Yanhua saw that everyone on the field had switched sides to support him. He was very proud and said arrogantly, "Yes, you have a way to make them unable to oppose you. Naturally, I can't outtalk you. I will immediately admit defeat." Li Yundong turned his face again and said to the students inside and outside the playground, "Do you all oppose whatever I agree with? Do you all agree with whatever I object to?" The students on the field laughed and said, "Yes, that's right. As long as you agree with it, we will oppose it. As long as you oppose it, we will agree with it." Li Yundong said loudly, "Well, listen carefully." After that, Li Yundong took a deep breath and said a famous sentence that shocked the universe and made the Bodhisattva shake his head in fear. Li Yundong roared, "I object to eating sh*t." For a moment, the playground was extremely quiet, and there was no sound on the field. Last week, the children's flowers were very powerful and ranked 7th. This week, there should be 4 updates. However, because I was going to attend the annual meeting this week, I cheekily asked for a leave from the children. There were still 2 updates a day, but the extra updates were temporarily cancelled. I will come back from Beijing on the 23rd. In other words, there were 3 updates on Tuesday this week. Tomorrow is Wednesday, and I will go to Beijing and won't be back until next Thursday. When I come back, I will make up for the 3 updates I owe. In other words, I owe the children 3 chapters this week. When I come back from the annual meeting, I will make up for it. Cupping one's hands and bowing. Chapter 294. Go to watch net. Li Yundong's roar was like a bolt from the blue, leaving everyone on and off the stage speechless. Go to watch net. Yanhua was even more dumbfounded, unable to react for a moment. The playground fell into an unprecedented silence, but soon a burst of earth-shattering laughter broke out. All the teachers and students on the playground were laughing their heads off. Some teachers laughed so hard that they almost lost their breath. Even the vice principal and the deputy mayor, who had been trying to maintain their image, couldn't help but have their faces twitch. Li Yundong didn't care about the laughter of the students below the playground. He turned to look at Yanhua and asked, "Do you object?" Yanhua had been too proud before, and had fallen into Li Yundong's trap. At this time, he was dumbfounded and couldn't say anything. Li Yundong shouted to the students below the playground, "Do you object?" The students laughed wildly. No. Who would dare to object? Li Yundong snorted, glanced at Yanhua and said, "So I won. Are you convinced?" Who would be convinced? However, Yanhua couldn't say anything unconvinced, because this was the rule he had just said. If he were to go back on his word in the blink of an eye, he would immediately beat the students on the stage to death. His face flushed red, and he snorted angrily. Without replying, he directly rushed off the rostrum, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. Seeing him leave, Li Yundong turned his eyes to Feng Na, who was laughing so hard that she couldn't stand up straight. He glared at her and said, "Don't do this kind of thing again in the future. Don't you think I'm annoying enough?" After that, he walked off the rostrum, ignoring the vice principal, the deputy mayor, and the others, and went straight to Su Chan and the others. He walked up to the group of foxes, glared at Su Chan, and then said with a sullen face, "Come with me." Su Chan didn't notice the sullen expression in Li Yundong's eyes. She wiped away the tears of laughter, and followed Li Yundong obediently. Chao Yi and the others noticed. Chao Yi whispered, "Oh no, the leader is angry." Lu Yuehong and Zhuang Yiting also whispered together, "What should we do?" The 3 big foxes looked at each other and smiled bitterly. "Let's follow them. It seems that this time, our good deed has turned into a disaster." Seeing that they were all following Li Yundong, Zhou Qin sighed, and had no choice but to follow them. Li Yundong walked alone with a dark face, not saying a word. The atmosphere was very depressing. A large group of beautiful women followed behind him. From Su Chan to Zhou Qin, from Chao Yi and the other big foxes to the little foxes, all of them were stunning beauties. This group of beautiful women followed behind Li Yundong in a mighty manner. All of them lowered their heads, like obedient wives who had done something wrong, which was very eye-catching. Watch net. 7K. OM. Some of the students who knew Li Yundong exclaimed one after another, sighing that Li Yundong was very lucky with women. But Li Yundong knew that if he didn't control this group of guys well, he was afraid that he would have to live a dark life in the future. He would have to clean up after these guys every day without rest. Li Yundong stopped at the gazebo in the garden behind the school. He sat down in the gazebo. Su Chan tried to sit in front of him, but Li Yundong barked at her. Who said you could sit? Stay where you are. Su Chan yelled at Li Yundong. Su Chan was startled and jumped up. She stared at Li Yundong with her eyes wide open, as if she didn't understand what she had done wrong. Li Yundong looked at the little girl who was looking at him eagerly. Her appearance was really lovable. If it had been in the past, he would have immediately held her in his arms and doted on her. But now he couldn't do that, because Li Yundong knew that he was now the leader of the Fox Zen school. A large group of people would be watching his every word and action. If he didn't handle the current situation well, there would be no way to control this group of fox spirits in the future. Therefore, he decided to start with the people closest to him. Li Yundong pulled a long face and shouted at Su Chan. Do you know why I asked you to stand? Su Chan had never seen Li Yundong speak to her in such a stern tone, with such a serious face. She was so scared that her face turned pale. She shook her head in panic, but she couldn't say anything. Seeing this, Li Yundong's heart softened, and he almost let it go. However, when he saw the big and small foxes crowding the pavilion, he immediately hardened his heart and shouted, You don't know? If you don't know, just keep standing. Tell me when you know. Su Chan was shocked, and tears fell down, but she didn't dare to cry out loud, for fear that she would make Li Yundong unhappy again. So she stood in the pavilion and didn't speak. Zhou Qin, who was standing next to her, opened her mouth as if she wanted to speak up for Su Chan. But at this time, Li Yundong cast her a sharp look, as if warning her not to speak. Zhou Qin immediately shut her mouth and didn't dare to make a sound. The other little fox spirits in the pavilion had originally seen the relationship between Li Yundong and Su Chan, and in fact, all of them had their own ideas. They all felt that their beauty was not inferior to Su Chan's, and their figures were not inferior to hers. Moreover, Li Yundong was not only young and handsome, but also had excellent shentong cultivation. He was also their savior. Many of the little fox spirits had the idea that if Su Chan could be the leader's lover, why couldn't they be? With this idea in mind, their minds became very active. Once their minds became active, they couldn't control themselves, and their eyes were always full of eagerness. But at this time, seeing that Li Yundong didn't even give face to the people closest to him, and scolded them in front of so many people, their faces suddenly turned pale with fear, and their hearts beat wildly. Go to the Fox News Network. Even Su Chan was being scolded like this. What about me? The restless thoughts of the little foxes immediately calmed down, and they all became uneasy. Chao Yi and the others naturally knew that Li Yundong was making an example out of them, but they hadn't expected that he would actually use Su Chan as an example. For a moment, they realized that although Li Yundong, the new leader, was young and looked gentle and casual, he was very ambitious and decisive. He had both tenderness and chivalry in his heart, but he also had an iron fist. At this time, Li Yundong said to Su Chan with a livid face, It's okay that you usually make trouble with me. I won't say anything, and I can accept anything you do. But now you're actually making trouble with your Sherbois and Shiji. Do you know what kind of place this is? Do you know who the people on the stage are? They are government officials. No matter how small their power is, they have more power than you and me. Do you think it's Mount Tianlong? Do you think it's the Fox Zen School? Do you know how it will end when things get out of hand? Do you think I can fight? No matter how good I am at fighting, can I fight against secular mortals? Yan Hua, an ordinary student, was able to force me to the point that I had no choice but to take his move in front of everyone's eyes. Do you really think that I'm the Jade Emperor who reigns supreme in this world? Li Yundong's words seemed to be lecturing Su Chan, but in fact, they were meant for Chao Yi and the others to hear. Su Chan's heart was like a mirror, but she still couldn't stand Li Yundong lecturing her in front of everyone. Her tears fell like pearls from a broken necklace. Chao Yi, Lu Yuehong, and Zhuang Yiting looked at each other. Chao Yi stepped forward and said, Leader, I took the initiative to bring them out. It's not Channer's fault. If you want to punish someone, punish me. After that, she was about to kneel down in front of everyone. Li Yundong quickly stood up to support her and said, Sherbua Chao Yi, what are you doing? Chao Yi said, Leader, as the saying goes, a country has its laws and a family has its rules. Our Fox Zen school naturally has our own rules. Leader, you are right. I was indeed rash in this matter. I didn't take into account the situation at that time. Please punish me. As she spoke, she was about to kneel down again. Li Yundong held her up, but Lui Wehong, who was next to him, also said, Leader, in fact, we also have our own difficulties. We are all worried that after you take over our Fox Zen school, you will feel that there will be one more burden, and in the end, you will abandon us. If that happens, we can only sit and wait for death. That's why we came down the mountain to help you secretly. But we didn't expect that in the end, we would be in trouble. I went to find 6 Shimmy first. If you want to blame someone, blame me. As she said this, she also knelt down. Li Yunyang quickly freed another hand to support Lui Wehong. But Zhuang Yiting, who was beside him, said, Leader, you are kind-hearted and chivalrous. We all admire you very much. We all hope that you can be the leader for a long time. Chanu is right. It's our fault in this matter. Please punish us. With a plop, Zhuang Yiting also knelt down. Li Yundong held down Chao Yi and Lui Wehong with only 2 hands. But he couldn't hold down Zhuang Yiting. He said repeatedly, What are you doing? Stand up. When the other little foxes of the Fox Zen school saw that the 3 Sherbua had knelt down, they didn't dare to remain standing. They all followed suit and knelt down. For a moment, the pavilion was full of beautiful women kneeling on the ground. Some of the people who had come with the big and small fox spirits to watch the fun saw this scene. They couldn't help but murmur, Oh my, what's the background of this boy? It's one thing for him to eat so many beautiful women alone, but he even has a master-servant complex. Isn't it too ridiculous? When Li Yundong saw that Chao Yi and the other 2 Sherbua, who were the most senior in the Fox Zen school, had actually knelt down on their own, his anger dissipated a lot. He said in a deep voice, Everyone, please get up. I can understand your worries. Although I, Li Yundong, was given the order in the face of danger and had no choice, I, Li Yundong, am a man of my word. Since I promised to be the leader of the Fox Zen school, I will not go back on my word, let alone give up halfway. These words made Chao Yi and the others overjoyed at the same time. They raised their heads and said in unison, Amitba, this is really a great fortune for our Fox Zen school. Li Yundong said, But you have to promise me a few things. Otherwise, even if you kneel through the stone slabs, I won't be the leader. Chao Yi and the others quickly asked, What things? Li Yundong said, First of all, you can't act on your own. You have to tell me if you want to do something. Chao Yi and the others smiled and said, Of course, you have to respect the leader. Li Yundong added, Second, you can't go down the mountain without permission, unless there are foreign enemies invading, and you can't resist them. Chao Yi and the others nodded again. Of course. Li Yundong continued. Third, don't kneel down easily in the future. Times are different now, and this is no longer popular. Just these 3, nothing else. Chao Yi and the others were shocked. That's all? Li Yundong nodded and said, Indeed. How long are you going to kneel? Why don't you get up? If others see you, they will think that I mistreated you. Chao Yi and the others laughed, stood up and praised. Leader, you really have a bodhisattva's heart. I thought that there would be extremely strict rules, but I didn't expect that they would be much more relaxed than when the former leader was here. Seeing that Chao Yi and the others had agreed, Li Yundong said with a smile, I'm not the reincarnation of the Devil King. Why are you making it sound so scary? If you have nothing to do now, hurry back to the mountain. Look at what you're wearing. Aren't you afraid of attracting reporters? Tomorrow, many people will definitely take videos of you with their mobile phones and post them directly on the internet. At that time, it will be hard for the Fox Zen school not to become famous. Chao Yi smiled and said, Yes, leader is right. We'll go back now. After saying that, she said goodbye to Li Yundong with the big and small fox spirits and left the pavilion. As soon as they left, the pavilion immediately became empty. Zhou Qin, who had been silent for a long time, also said, Master, I have something to do first. I'll come back to you later. Li Yundong knew that Zhou Qin was giving him a chance to be alone with Su Chan. He smiled gratefully at Zhou Qin. After watching her disappear from his sight, he gently hugged Su Chan and said softly with a smile, "What's wrong? Have you been wronged?" Su Chan's eyes were misty with tears. She pouted and hit Li Yundong with her hand. "You're so annoying. You scared me to death just now. I thought you were going to expel me from the sect." Li Yundong said softly, "How could I? How could I bear to do that? But you saw the situation just now. If I don't make an example of you, I'm afraid that I will never have a peaceful day as the leader. Chao Yi and the others are your Sherbua, and there are so many of your Shiji peers here. I have to save them some face. If I don't respect the elders in front of the juniors, they won't respect me in the future. So I can only vent my anger on you. If you feel wrong now, hit me, scold me, and vent your anger on me." Su Chan smiled through her tears. She bit her lip and stared at Li Yundong, pretending to be angry. She pouted and said, "Then close your eyes. I'm going to teach you a lesson." Li Yundong closed his eyes with a smile and said, "Please be merciful. Don't." Before he could finish his words, he felt soft and moist lips touch his. Li Yundong shuddered as if he had been electrocuted. He immediately opened his eyes and hugged the little girl, ready to kiss her passionately. However, Su Chan giggled and ran out of the pavilion. Before she could take 2 steps, Li Yundong caught up with her and held her in his arms. Li Yundong pretended to be angry and said, "Well, you want to run away when you're right in front of my mouth. Hurry up and let your leader have a good taste." Su Chan covered her face and mouth with both hands, revealing only a pair of crescent moon-like eyes. "I won't let you taste it. I won't let you taste it. Who told you to be so mean to me just now? This is my lesson for you." Li Yundong laughed and said, "Well, then I'll have to force myself on you." Although he said so, it was impossible for him to do so. After all, this was the back mountain of the school. It would not be fun if someone took it. The two laughed for a while. Then Li Yundong walked out of the back mountain with the little girl in his arms. After a few steps, he saw Chao Yi standing not far away, as if waiting for him. Li Yundong let go of Su Chan's hand and walked up to her in confusion. He asked, "Chao Yi Sherbua, what's the matter?" Chao Yi smiled and said, "Yes, before I went down the mountain, I saw the leader worrying about the livelihood of our Fox Zen school. At that time, I remembered this matter in my heart. Just now, it suddenly occurred to me that our Fox Zen school seems to have another industry. But it was all the responsibility of the former leader. I once heard from the former leader that he seemed to have an outer disciple managing this industry. I think if the leader is in a hurry to use money and manpower, he might as well ask this outer disciple about the situation of this industry." "The Fox Zen school has an industry?" When Li Yundong heard this, he was both curious and surprised. If there was an industry, then he wouldn't have to be so nervous about making money everywhere. Chapter 295. Go to Watch Network. When Chao Yi heard what Li Yundong said, she laughed and said, "Of course. Otherwise, what would cultivators like us who don't work in production eat? Don't tell me they all sleep in the open?" Li Yundong asked, "What kind of industry is it?" Chao Yi looked embarrassed and said, "This industry is in Dongwu City. If the leader wants to see it, he has to go back to Dongwu City. Go to Kamwu. 7K. OM. Li Yundong asked in confusion, "Don't you know what this industry is?" Chao Yi said, "It has always been managed by the leader, but in recent years, the former leader has handed over the affairs of the sect to eldest sister Emoashi. Ah no, it's Yanfang. Now Yanfang has been defeated and fled, and the former leader is dead. I don't know what this industry is. I only know that the former leader once mentioned it." Li Yundong pondered for a while and said, "Last time I looked through the things left by the former leader Lu Yi, I didn't find anything about the industry of the Fox Zen school." Chao Yi thought for a moment and said, "Maybe the leader has recorded this matter elsewhere." Li Yundong suddenly thought of something and thought, "Could it be that Chao Yi Sherbua wants to take this opportunity to let me go back to the Fox Zen school?" He raised his eyes and saw a trace of hope in Chao Yi's eyes. Li Yundong smiled and said, "I understand what you mean. You go back to the mountain first. I have something to do here and can't leave, but I will go back in 2 days. Help me find the room of the former leader, Lu Yi, and see where this industry is recorded. Chao Yi was a little disappointed, but she didn't say anything. She smiled slightly, said goodbye to Li Yundong, and left. When she walked out of the school gate, she saw Lu Yuehong and the others coming up to her, looking at her anxiously. Chao Yi shook her head slightly, and the fox spirits sighed together. Chao Yi said, "The leader is busy. Let's go back first. Don't cause any more trouble for him." After the group of fox spirits left, Li Yundong obviously felt relieved. He shook his head and sighed. You guys are simply a group of walking troubles. Wherever you go, there will be trouble. Su Chan said coquettishly, "You dislike me." Li Yundong feigned a look of displeasure. "Yet you've caused me so much trouble. Of course I despise you." Su Chan and Li Yundong were used to playing around like this. She giggled and said, Then, how about I massage your back?" Li Yundong said with a straight face, "Not good." Su Chan rolled her eyes and said, "Then how about I give you a massage?" Li Yundong snorted. "Shit. If you don't have any creativity, you're not sincere at all." Su Chan thought for a moment and said, "Then, how about I cook for you?" Li Yundong was shocked and said repeatedly, "Not good, not good, not good." Su Chan giggled and bent over. "This is not good, that is not good. So what do you want?" Li Yundong chuckled and whispered in the little girl's ear. The little girl suddenly blushed and covered her red and swollen face with her hands, giggling. Watch net. 7K. OM. Su Chan covered her face with both hands, but the corner of her eyes peeked out from the gap between her fingertips. She stole a glance at Li Yundong, and then her surprised and happy eyes quickly turned back. Her eyes were really charming and seductive, tickling people's hearts. Li Yundong was aroused by the girl's seductive behavior. He smiled and said, "How about it? When we get back, we'll do the things that tell people to take off their clothes and pants." Su Chan giggled and ran away, leaving a string of laughter that sounded like silver bells. "You're so annoying. If the two of us love each other for a long time, why would we sleep on the bed?" Li Yundong laughed and chased after him. "Nonsense. Haven't you heard that the golden wind and jade dew are better than adulterers and lovers?" Su Chan was hugged by Li Yundong and burrowed into his arms like an ostrich. She giggled and said, "You're the adulterer and lover. You're so annoying. How can you talk about me like that?" The two of them played for a while, and Li Yundong's eyes suddenly flashed. He saw Zhou Qin looking at them silently not far away. His heart skipped a beat, and he let go of the little girl and patted her head lovingly. "Well, I won't play with you anymore. I still have something to tell Zhou Qin." Su Chan was very well behaved. She followed Li Yundong step by step, and when she walked up to Zhou Qin, she greeted her very affectionately. Zhou Qin had watched Li Yundong and Su Chan play intimately, as if there was no one else around. She couldn't help but think of the days she had spent with Li Yundong in the ward when she was hospitalized. For a moment, her heart was filled with bitterness, but these emotions only flashed in a flash and were well hidden by her. When Li Yundong came closer, she said respectfully, "Master." Seeing that she was always wearing a mask, Li Yundong couldn't help but sigh and say, "Zhou Qin, don't be like this. When you call me master, it makes me feel like I'm in my 70s or 80s. No matter what, we are still classmates and friends, right? Why do we have to be so distant now? You'd better call me Li Yundong, okay?" Zhou Qin couldn't help biting her lip and shaking her head stubbornly. "No, a teacher for a day is a father for a lifetime. There should be a difference between a senior and a junior." Li Yundong pretended to be angry and said overbearingly, "But you haven't officially acknowledged me as your master yet, have you? Before you acknowledge me as your master, I still can't be considered your master. At most I can be considered an in-name master. Go to the internet. 7K. OM. Just call me by my name. It won't be too late to call me that after you've officially acknowledged me as your master." After that, he didn't allow Zhou Qin to object and said, "That's settled. By the way, I actually want to discuss something else with you." Zhou Qin opened her mouth and wanted to speak, but she saw that although Li Yundong's expression was gentle, The unquestionable momentum in his words made her unable to say anything to refute. For a moment, Zhou Qin was filled with emotion. He has grown up so fast. At first he still had the immaturity of a boy, and he was very immature in dealing with people. But today in the pavilion, he had used both soft and hard methods to knead the Fox Zen school like a ball of mud. Everyone was obedient, and he really had the spirit of a leader. Are some people born to be big and do great things? Zhou Qin swallowed what she wanted to say and asked, "What is it?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "It's not a good thing for us to talk here. Let's find a place to talk slowly." Zhou Qin thought for a moment and said, "Then let's find a place to drink tea and talk while drinking tea." Li Yundong thought to himself, "Now there are places where money is needed everywhere. I can't ask Zhou Qin to help me with things." Li Yundong didn't hide it from Zhou Qin and said, "Forget it, let's go back to my house. Let's eat and talk. Don't spend money. I've been very poor recently." When Zhou Qin heard that she could eat the food cooked by Li Yundong himself, a rare smile appeared on her cold face. "Okay, then I'll do as you say. You wait at the school gate. I'll go get the car." The three of them drove to Li Yundong's home in Hongxing New area. As soon as they entered the house, Li Yundong saw Zi Yuan meditating on the balcony, and Ruan Hongling sitting on the sofa, one hand holding her chin in boredom, and the other pressing the TV remote control to do finger exercises. Li Yundong was stunned. He hadn't expected that Zi Yuan and Ruan Hongling would be in his house. Li Yundong immediately glanced at Su Chan, afraid that the little girl would think too much. But when he looked at Su Chan, he happened to see her looking at him. He saw the little girl looking at him with a smile, secretly hooking her little finger with his, and whispering in his ear, "I believe you." Li Yundong's heart warmed. He smiled slightly, turned his head, and said to Ruan Hongling, "When did you come?" Ruan Hongling saw Li Yundong at a glance and jumped up. She turned her head and shouted to Zi Yuan on the balcony, "Sister Zi Yuan, he's back." Zi Yuan opened her eyes and looked at Li Yundong at the door. She stood up gracefully and bowed respectfully with one hand. Amateus, Zi Yuan from the Linggong sect greets Xinren Li, the leader of the Fox Zen school. Ruan Hongling also joined in the fun and followed suit. Amateus, Ruan Hongling from the Linggong sect greets Xinren Li, the leader of the Fox Zen school. Li Yundong laughed and looked at Zi Yuan carefully. Seeing that she didn't seem to be injured, he felt relieved that he had hurt her in the last fight. He quickly waved his hand and said with a smile, "Don't joke around, you two." Ruan Hongling chuckled and sat back on the sofa, but Zi Yuan still said seriously, "This is not a joke. Li Yundong, you are now the leader of the Fox Zen school, and bear the heavy responsibility of the sect. Your every word and action represents the Fox Zen school, and directly affects the entire cultivation world. Now that you have passed the divine tribulation, have you ever thought about where you will go in the future?" Li Yundong said seriously, "This is also what I have been thinking about these 2 days. I can talk to you later. But do you know where Yin Fang is? She took Su Chan's master, Ao Wushuang, and there has been no news of her." Zi Yuan shook her head and said, "I don't know. When I returned to the Linggong sect, I didn't see her. I think she found a place to hide. It won't be easy to find her." Li Yundong thought for a while and smiled. "Then I'll go cook first. We'll talk about this after dinner." After that, Li Yundong rolled up his sleeves and went into the kitchen. Zi Yuan also smiled and followed him into the kitchen, saying, "Let me help." Zhou Qin also said, "I'll help you wash the vegetables." Ruan Hongling also joined in the fun. "I'll help too." Zi Yuan looked back at her at the door of the kitchen and said with a smile, "What can you do for me? Do you know how to cook? Go to the living room and wait." Ruan Hongling was rejected, so she sat on the sofa in the living room and continued to play with the TV remote control. Su Chan was born to be lively, so she also jumped into the kitchen. As soon as Li Yundong saw her enter the kitchen, he immediately pointed with his finger and shouted, "Step back, keep a distance from the kitchen." Su Chan immediately pouted and said loudly, "You're so annoying. I won't make trouble." Li Yundong walked to the door and pushed her into the living room with a smile. Then he pressed her down on the sofa and said, "If you sit here obediently, You'll be helping. After that, he went into the kitchen and slammed the door. Su-chan was very unhappy. She pouted and grabbed a cushioned pillow on the sofa in her hand. She couldn't help but look at Ruan Hongling, who was sitting on the other side of the sofa, and had also been driven out of the kitchen. The two of them snorted at the same time, turned their heads to the other side, and sat a little further away at the same time. Li Yundong was a good cook, and Zi Yuan was also a good cook. Although Zhou Qin's cooking skills were average, she was very dexterous. The three of them quickly prepared a table of dishes. At the dining table, Li Yundong wanted to talk about something, but Zi Yuan kept her head down and ate without saying a word. Ruan Hongling, who was next to her, did the same. Li Yundong knew that this was their rule. Don't talk when eating, don't talk when sleeping. Seeing that Zi Yuan and Ruan Hongling were unwilling to speak, Li Yundong didn't say anything either. They finished eating in silence at the dining table, and cleaned up the table. Li Yundong saw that everyone was sitting on the sofa in the living room, or sitting cross-legged on the carpet. After muting the TV, he said, Zi Yuan, I've thought about what you asked me just now. Although I didn't expect that I would become the leader of the Fox Zen School before, now that I have become one, I will be a competent leader. Whether from Su-chan's point of view, or from my own point of view, the reputation of the Fox Zen School was not very good before, and I hope that it can be reversed in my hands. Zi Yuan bowed and praised, immeasurable longevity and happiness. Generally, this is really a great kindness that benefits the cultivation world. Li Yundong smiled and said, Zi Yuan, don't always be so polite like Zhou Qin. I can't stand it if you're too polite. Zi Yuan smiled slightly and didn't say anything. Li Yundong pondered for a while. He looked at Zhou Qin and then at Zi Yuan and said, Zhou Qin, you are my friend and my registered disciple. Zi Yuan, you are my teacher and my friend, so I won't hide it from you. The Fox Zen School is now an empty shell. Not only is it empty, but it also owes debts. Even the Taoist temple where the Fox Zen School is located is rented, and it will be taken back in a month. If you want to renew the lease, you have to rent it for 5 years at a time, which will cost more than 5 million yuan. Hearing this, Su-chan couldn't help grabbing Li Yundong's arm and saying in surprise, So much? How can we have so much money? Zhou Qin thought for a moment without batting an eyelid, then said, I can gather 500,000 yuan. Li Yundong waved his hand and said, No, because of me, my family's financial situation is not what it used to be. How can I take your money again? The reason why I called you here and told you about this is that you are my friend, my registered disciple, and one of the people closest to me. When Zhou Qin heard this, she couldn't help but be shocked. She felt sour and sweet at the same time, and all kinds of feelings welled up in her heart. For a moment, she was lost in thought, but she heard Li Yundong continue. You are very knowledgeable. I want to ask you to give me some advice and give me some ideas, because I want to do something. In the living room, Su-chan, Zi Yuan, Ruan Hongling, and Zhou Qin all asked in unison, What is it? Chapter 296. Go to Watch Network. Li Yundong pondered for a while and said carefully, I want to do some business related to traditional Chinese medicine. I've been thinking about this matter for the past few days. From the May 4th movement to the end of the Four Olds and the Cultural Revolution, our traditional culture has been destroyed beyond recognition. Although Western medicine is the mainstream now, when I was in the city hospital, I felt that there was still a market for our traditional Chinese medicine. Go to Kamwang. 7K. OM. At this point, Su-chan asked in a low voice, You want to open a clinic? You want to be Sun Simiao? Li Yundong couldn't help laughing. I can't be Sun Simiao. If I were to sit in the clinic all day long, would I still be able to cultivate? Zi Yuan nodded and said, That's true. Although there are 9 doctors out of 10, almost no cultivators are professional doctors. Whether it's Gu Hong of the Danding sect or Zhongli Quan and Lu Dongbin of the Jindan sect, although they have stories of practicing medicine to save the world, they are all coincidences. They are not professional doctors. At this time, Zhou Qin spoke. As soon as she opened her mouth, she said, Master. Li Yundong interrupted her. Why are you calling me that again? Zhou Qin smiled slightly and changed her words. Li Yundong, do you want to open your own hospital to promote traditional Chinese medicine? Li Yundong sighed. I want to, but where do I have the money and strength to do so? How much money would it cost to open a private hospital? What I want to do is to sell medicinal herbs, but I don't know how to get started. So I want to discuss it with you too. After Li Yundong finished speaking, Yuan Hongling suddenly said, Gazelle sect and other major external alchemy sects control many medicinal herb production bases and operating companies. If you want to do this, I'm afraid that you will become enemies with external alchemy. Li Yundong was stunned. No way. I do my own thing, and he does his. Why do you have to make things difficult for me? Because external alchemy relies on alchemy to run its own sect. The pills they refine can often be sold at sky-high prices in the black market of the cultivation world. So they refine pills, and then sell them. This forms an industrial chain of external alchemy. The most primitive industrial chain is the production and control of various Chinese herbs. Among the people in this room, although Su Chan had heard a lot about the cultivation world from her master, she knew very little about external alchemy. Li Yundong had only cultivated for half a year, so he knew nothing about it, let alone Zhou Qin. Zhou Qin was listening attentively. She suddenly asked, What is external alchemy? Is it a sect that specializes in refining pills? Zi Yuan smiled slightly and explained, In terms of cultivation methods, the cultivation world is divided into the Niden sect and the external alchemy sect. In the Niden sect, Arjingyi school is the leader, and there are sects such as the Jinshan sect and the Danding sect. In the external alchemy sect, the Gazelle sect is the leader, and there are sects such as the Maoshan sect and the Qingwei sect. Watch net. The Niden sect focuses on the human body's Niden, while the external alchemy focuses on taking elixirs. Hearing this, Zhou Qin suddenly understood, but her expression was still a little strange. Obviously, she had just come into contact with the world of cultivators, and was a little uncomfortable. Zhou Qin looked at Li Yundong and asked, Are you from the Niden sect or the external alchemy sect? This question stumped Li Yundong. He felt that he had officially started cultivating after taking the Rinyuan Jindan, so he should be regarded as a member of the external alchemy sect. However, his Niden cultivation was extremely solid, so it seemed that he should also be regarded as a member of the Niden sect. Li Yundong thought for a while, and became confused. Zi Yuan, who was beside him, helped him out with a smile. Li Yundong should be regarded as a member of the external alchemy sect. He is a master of both internal and external cultivation. After that, Yuan Hongling suddenly snorted and said, If it weren't for the Rinyuan Jindan and my sister Zi Yuan's 9-turn dew pill, how could you have improved so quickly? Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He looked at Zhou Qin, his eyes sparkling. He kept thinking to himself, If only I had another Rinyuan Jindan, I could give it to Zhou Qin. It would be my way of repaying her for helping me destroy my family. However, Zi Yuan glanced at Yuan Hongling faintly, and there was a hint of warning in her eyes. She said to Li Yundong, I believe that you can also feel how helpful an external elixir is to your cultivation. From this, it can be seen that an immortal pill is a treasure that all cultivators yearn for. Precisely because external elixirs are so important and can bring about huge economic benefits, the sect controls precious alchemy techniques. Therefore, in order to control the profits of this industry, they must control the upstream of the industry chain, which is various kinds of precious Chinese medicinal herbs. Only by controlling this area would they have enough raw materials to refine all kinds of pills. Otherwise, if this business is controlled by others, then the external alchemy sect won't be far from annihilation. Li Yundong suddenly understood. I understand. The external alchemy regards this place as its own forbidden land and doesn't allow others to touch it, right? Zi Yuan nodded and said, That's true. Watch net. Because of this, the Niden sect and the external alchemy sect have fought several times in secret. A few months ago, the appearance of Rinyuan Jindan caused a bloody storm in the cultivation world. Even the Fox Zen school was involved. When she said this, Zi Yuan gave Li Yundong a meaningful look. Su Chan and Wan Hongling both looked at Li Yundong with complicated expressions. Li Yundong smiled and said, "Why are you looking at me? Zi Yuan, you said so much. You just want to say that it's impossible to make Chinese medicinal herbs. It will cause a conflict with the external alchemy sect." Zi Yuan said, "There is nothing in this world that is absolutely impossible. The key is whether you have enough strength. If the Fox Zen School is the most powerful sect in the world, then you can compete with the external alchemy sect for this business. But now that the Fox Zen School has suddenly changed, it is time to recuperate. If you suddenly intervene in this business, I'm afraid that you will get into trouble." Li Yundong sighed and said, "If this doesn't work, then what can I do?" Zhou Qin suddenly said, "Actually, I think Li Yundong, you can think about the problem in front of you from another perspective." Li Yundong turned to look at her and said, "Go ahead, I'm listening." Zhou Qin stroked her hair behind her ear and said with confidence, "The biggest problem in front of us is the lack of money, right?" Li Yundong nodded and said, "Yes, I have a headache when I think about the 5 million in a month." Zhou Qin couldn't help frowning. "If you want to earn 5 million a month, it's hard for me to think of a good way, except for gambling or winning the lottery. But I do know a way to make money." Hearing this, Li Yundong urged with interest, "What way?" Zhou Qin said, "Do you remember the restaurant we went to eat French food last time?" Li Yundong burst into laughter. He was just about to say something when his arm suddenly moved. Someone was poking him with a finger. Li Yundong turned around and saw Su Chan smiling sweetly at him. It was obvious that she had also remembered what had happened at the French restaurant last time. Li Yundong and Su Chan looked at each other and smiled, then turned their heads and said, "Of course I remember." Zhou Qin's eyes darkened, but soon returned to normal. She said, "There are a few shops on that street for rent recently. I was wondering if you could start with a small shop first. After all, the initial investment is a little less. There is a lot of traffic on this street. As long as you choose the right way, I believe you will make a profit." Li Yundong thought for a moment and sighed. "If you don't accumulate one step at a time, you won't be able to reach 1,000 miles. What you're talking about is the way of doing business. Think about it. How can you become fat in one go? Where can I find 5 million in a month?" At this time, Zi Yuan suddenly said, "I probably understand your difficulties. Now you are very worried that you won't be able to pay for the rent of the Fox Zen School Taoist Temple next month. And you are also worried that you won't be able to support more than a dozen people in the Fox Zen School in the future, right?" Li Yundong smiled bitterly and said, "I feel really embarrassed that you put it so bluntly." Zi Yuan smiled and said, "It's okay. I'll lend it to you. 6 million, 5 million for the rent, and 1 million for the startup capital of your business. Is that enough?" Li Yundong was stunned. "You'll lend it to me? Do you have so much money?" Wan Hongling shouted. "Sister Zi Yuan, this is all the savings of our Lingong sect." Zi Yuan acted as if she hadn't heard her. She said lightly, "This money is just sitting there. Now that the value of money is so high, it's better to take it out and give it to those who need it." Li Yundong thought for a moment and didn't argue. He slapped his thigh and said, "Okay, I'll pay you back 10% interest in the future." Zi Yuan smiled slightly and turned to Wan Hongling. "Go to my room and see how much money is left in my account. Then bring me the checkbook." Wan Hongling pulled Zi Yuan's arm in surprise. "Sister Zi Yuan, what will we eat in the future?" Zi Yuan smiled and said meaningfully, "Are you afraid that Jinren Li, who is famous all over the world, will renege on his debt?" When Li Yundong heard this, all kinds of feelings welled up in his heart. He thought to himself, "I don't know what kind of incense I burned in my previous life, but I got Su Chan's favor and companionship. Now I even have Zhou Qin and Zi Yuan, these two beauties, to help me. I'm afraid it will be difficult for me to pay them back in this life." Wan Hongling stood up unhappily and glared at Li Yundong. "Hey, give me your bank account number." Li Yundong didn't mind. He took out the credit card he carried with him and handed it over. Wan Hongling took the card, turned around, and jumped into her home from the balcony. Su Chan watched her leave and pulled Li Yundong worriedly. She whispered, Yundong, you borrowed so much money at once. How are you going to pay it back? Li Yundong pinched the little girl's nose lovingly. Don't worry. I'll take care of it. Su Chan shook her head and said, How can I not worry? In the past, when you owed the bank tens of thousands of yuan, we almost ended up on the streets. Now you owe millions. Li Yundong spread his hands and said to Zi Yuan with a smile, Zhenren Zi Yuan, if I don't come forward, will your Linggong sect accept part-time workers who sweep the floor? Do you want me to sweep the floor every day to pay back the money? Zi Yuan smiled and said, I can't afford to hire a leader of a sect to sweep the floor for our Linggong sect. Besides, with your reputation, isn't that a waste of talent? Li Yundong waved his hand and said with a smile, Don't say that. If you really feel bad, you can raise my salary. Su Chan shouted from the side, If you sweep the floor, what will I do? Li Yundong laughed and said, What can you do with your thick hands and feet? Just don't make trouble. Su Chan stamped her feet and said angrily, You're so annoying. You look down on me. Li Yundong put his palms together and said with a smile, How dare I look down on you, Fox Fairy? Ba. They were chatting and laughing in the room, but it wasn't long before Wan Hongling rushed in from the balcony and shouted, Oh no, Sister Zi Yuan, it's bad. Zi Yuan's face darkened and she shouted, Hongling, as a cultivator, how can you lose your composure like this? Where is your cultivation? Is the sky falling down? Wan Hongling said with a pale face, Sister Zi Yuan, the Zhengyi school has frozen our bank accounts. Zi Yuan had always been calm, but when she suddenly heard this, her face suddenly changed, and she cried out involuntarily, What? Chapter 297. Go to watch net. When Li Yundong heard the bad news, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. He tried to find joy in the bitterness and said to Zi Yuan, who was shocked, Now both of us are poor. I'll dismantle the Fox Zen school, and you dismantle the Linggong sect. Let's form a beggar gang. After saying that, he laughed out loud to amuse himself. Watch net. Color asterisk caret in text. Learn % super hashtag speed. Update. Wan Hongling glared at him from the side. You're actually gloating. Li Yundong spread his hands and said helplessly, Should I cry? This is called sympathizing with each other. At this time, Zi Yuan came to her senses. She said to Wan Hongling with an ugly expression, Have you confirmed it? Don't ever lie to me. Wan Hongling jumped up and said excitedly, Sister Zi Yuan, when have I ever lied to you? When have I ever disobeyed your words? Only then did Zi Yuan believe it. She looked serious and murmured to herself, So soon? Is the Zhengyi school eager to annex our Linggong sect? Although her voice was low, Li Yundong heard it clearly. He asked, What's wrong? Isn't Zhengyi school in the same sect as you? Why would he want to annex you? At this time, Zi Yuan's Taoist heart was in a mess, and she looked worried. She didn't answer Li Yundong's question for a while, but Wan Hongling said loudly, In theory, we are under the Zhengyi school, but in fact, the Linggong sect is just a branch of the Zhengyi school. Just like the Chuanjin sect has the Chuanjin Dragon sect, the Chuanjin Dragon sect has the Green Cave sect of the Dragon Gate, and the West Heart sect of the Dragon Gate. On the surface, this is a subordinate relationship, but in fact, they are all independent of each other. Humph! The Zhengyi school has coveted our 3 great magic treasures for a long time. They have long wanted to annex our sect and take all the 3 great magic treasures. They went too far this time. They actually froze our assets. What right do they have to do that? The more Wan Hongling spoke, the angrier she got. No, I'm going to reason with them. With that, Wan Hongling stomped her feet and was about to leave, but Zi Yuan shouted, Stop. Get back here. Wan Hongling said angrily, Sister Zi Yuan, last time they bullied us at the door. This time, they directly forced us into a dead end. How long are you going to endure and retreat? Zi Yuan sighed softly and said, If you go, how can you reason with them? You have to know that these are actually donations from pilgrims. Nominally, they belong to our Linggong sect, but in fact, Zhengyi School also has the right to appropriate and manipulate them. Because these pilgrims go for the name of Zhengyi School, there are very few who really donate for the name of Linggong sect. Watch net. At this time, Li Yundong heard some clues. He suddenly interrupted and said, "You mean that the money you originally intended to lend me was actually donated by people who came to the Taoist temple to worship and burn incense? And the money actually belongs to both the Linggong sect and the Zhengyi School. Now the Zhengyi School has frozen your assets?" Ziyuan nodded. There was disdain and mockery in the corner of her mouth. This is the same as many corrupt officials donating to the temple. They just want to feel at ease. Some people want to ask for some prescriptions to cure diseases and calm the nerves, while others want to ask for the way of immortals. Therefore, they will donate money without hesitation. Our Taoist temple is open to all directions. The money originally came from the people, so it would be a waste if we don't take it. If there is a chance in the future, we can also use it for the people. Speaking of this, Ziyuan sighed. It's a pity that it's frozen now. I can't help you. Wan Hongling said. Sister Ziyuan, a while ago, wasn't there an official who kept pestering you to teach her cultivation? How about you go and beg him to help us unfreeze our accounts? Before Ziyuan could speak, Li Yundong said flatly, "No, if you ask for help, you will have to accept it. As the saying goes, if Ziyuan goes to beg him, it will be a huge favor. At that time, she will be controlled by him, and he will definitely have all kinds of requests for Ziyuan. This is something I absolutely don't want to see. Even if I, Li Yundong, take the Fox Zen school up and down the street to beg, I will never ask for a penny like this." His words were sonorous and powerful. Su Chan nodded hard, wrapped her arms around Li Yundong's arm, and nodded hard. "Well, at worst, I'll go to the streets with you again." Li Yundong pretended to be angry and said, "Scoundrel, when did I let you live on the streets?" Su Chan giggled and said, "I was just saying." Li Yundong glared at her and said, "If I have no money, I will sell you and then open an open bidding. I will sell you to whoever offers the highest price." Su Chan suddenly became anxious and said angrily, No, you can't do this." Li Yundong laughed and rubbed the little girl's head dotingly. "I was just saying." Su Chan pouted and covered the top of her head with her hand. She said unhappily, "You should imitate me." Li Yundong and Su Chan laughed for a while, but the tense and depressing atmosphere in the room dissipated a lot. Go to the internet. 7K. OM. Ziyuan looked at him with admiration and helplessness. "I admire Jimren Li's noble character and unquestionable integrity, but I can't help you now. How are you going to get through this crisis? Could it be that everyone in the Fox Zen school is going to beg on the streets?" Li Yundong sighed, his face gloomy and gloomy. Half a year ago, he had been a clueless otaku, and his major had been useless. Raising a vixen like Su Chan at home had caused him to go bankrupt and be saddled with debt. Now he had to raise a group of vixens. It was a huge headache. Li Yundong thought for a while, then suddenly slapped the table and shouted, "I have an idea." His shout startled Wan Hongling and Su Chan. But Zhou Qin and Ziyuan's eyes lit up at the same time, and they asked, "What is it?" Li Yundong waved his hand and said, "At worst, I'll take the Fox Zen school to form a dance troupe and tour the country." As he said this, he pointed at Zhou Qin and said, "You be the receptionist." He pointed at Su Chan and said, "You be the announcer." As he said this, he pointed at Wan Hongling and said, "Anyway, you have no money. Why don't you join me? You are good looking. You will be in charge of collecting money at the front desk." Finally, he pointed at Ziyuan and said, "Ziyuan has the temperament of a big sister. Okay, you will be the foreman." As Li Yundong said this, Su Chan and Wan Hongling both burst out laughing. Zhou Qin's cold face couldn't help but show a smile, and her cheeks moved. Ziyuan smiled. She knew that Li Yundong was joking, so she asked, "Then what will you do? Be a big boss, and a capitalist who enjoys the fruits of others' labor?" Li Yundong patted his chest and said loudly, "I will perform breaking stones with my chest. This is my specialty." Before he could finish his words, everyone in the room burst out laughing. Zhou Qin thought of Li Yundong's performance last semester and couldn't help giggling. After laughing for a while, she covered her mouth with her hand, turned around and moved her shoulders. Su Chan laughed the most and burrowed into Li Yundong's arms. She couldn't even straighten her back, and her eyes turned into crescent moons. She was filled with emotion and admiration in her heart. My master not only has a high cultivation quotient, but he is also talented. What's more, he is so optimistic and humorous, even in such a difficult situation. How can I not love him? After the group of poor people laughed for a while, Zhou Qin finally held back her laughter and said, "Let's get back to business. Since we can't solve it for the time being, we might as well make some preparations." Li Yundong looked at her and saw that although her face was cold, there was still a trace of a smile at the corner of her eyes. She was like a red stamen of a wintersweet in the cold winter, charming and moving. His heart skipped a beat, and he quickly restrained himself and asked, "What preparations?" Zhou Qin said, "Since we can't come up with so much money for the time being, let's put the lease of the Fox Zen School aside for the time being. Anyway, there is still a month left. But we can't not do what we can do in front of us just because we can't come up with the lease money." Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat. "I understand what you mean. You mean that we still have to open the shop. At least we have to open a way to make money, and then we can find another way to find the lease money? Is that what you mean?" Zhou Qin smiled and nodded. "That's exactly what I mean. Although my family's financial situation has collapsed, I still have a little savings. I can also sell my car and get 500,000 yuan, which should be enough for your startup capital. Moreover, once your shop is up and running, you can use the storefront as collateral to get a loan from the bank. Then, you can discuss with the Taoist temple's landlord to see if you can pay in installments. Perhaps the problem will be solved." Li Yundong couldn't help but praise. "A rich family is indeed a rich family. Zhou Qin, your words are worth 10,000 of our nonsense here. You have pointed out a good way. Not bad, not bad. Let's do that. However, you can't pay for this. I already owe you too much. I can't use your money anymore." Zhou Qin said seriously, "Since I have entered the school and become your disciple, this money can be my entrance fee and apprenticeship fee." Li Yundong was unwilling. He shook his head and said, "No, absolutely not. It's not that I don't want to accept your kindness, but I haven't officially accepted you as a disciple yet. If I accept such a heavy gift, it will be bad for my reputation in the future. Moreover, I heard that the Fox Zen School has an industry. I want to see what it is first. If I can find a way to turn this industry into money, maybe I can get through the current difficulties." Li Yundong said kindly to Zhou Qin, "Don't use your money for now. If I really have no other way, I will ask you for help. Is that okay?" Zhou Qin sighed slightly in her heart, but she nodded with a smile on her face. At this time, Wan Hongling suddenly asked, "I've been listening to you for a long time, and I've been thinking about a problem." Li Yundong asked, "What problem?" Wan Hongling asked in confusion. "Why do you have to rent that piece of land? The Fox Zen School has been severely damaged, and its location has been exposed to all the cultivation sects in the world. Why not move to another place?" Li Yundong pondered for a while. He raised his head and looked at Wan Hongling, then turned to Zi Yuan and said, "I'm going back to the Fox Zen School. Why don't you come back with me? I will tell you why I want to guard the mountain where the Fox Zen School is located. Moreover, since I started cultivating, I have received a lot of kindness from you. I haven't been able to find a chance to repay you. Now that I think about it, I shouldn't keep it to myself." Zi Yuan thought for a moment and said, "It's not impossible for me to go back to the Fox Zen School with you, but it has to be at night. Otherwise, it won't be a good thing if some cultivators see me going in and out of the Fox Zen School alone during the day." Wan Hongling curled her lips and muttered in her heart, "You went to find him as soon as you went down the mountain, and you even did this kind of thing. It's really unnecessary." Li Yundong nodded and said with a smile, "Well, let's go back together in the evening." Su Chan clapped her hands and praised him, saying with a smile, "Okay, okay." They waited until late at night. Before leaving, Li Yundong thought for a moment and said to Zi Yuan, Wan Hongling and Su Chan, Zhou Qin can't fly. You go first. I'll take her and fly slowly. Don't wait for me on the way. Ziyuan and Ruan Hongling nodded and turned into two beams of cyan light. Su Chan knew that since Li Yundong had accepted Zhou Qin as his disciple, he would definitely pass on the way to her. The little girl took Li Yundong's hand and said softly, "Then I'll wait for you at the school." After that, she looked at Li Yundong reluctantly, then turned into a beam of cyan light and left. Although it was not the first time that Zhou Qin had seen such magical magic as Ziyuan and Su Chan, she still couldn't suppress the violent beating of her heart at this time. It was just like when Li Yundong had seen the door of an unknown world open to him. She felt excited and nervous. Although Li Yundong was gentle and approachable, he was surprisingly serious and cold at this time. He stood on the balcony, and the bright moonlight fell from the sky. It was like a top light on the stage hitting him, covering his body with a faint white halo. His figure was like a deep pool and a mountain, awe-inspiring and inviolable. At this moment, Li Yundong was like a strict teacher examining his students. Li Yundong reached out a hand to Zhou Qin and asked in a deep voice, "Do you want to see the real cultivation world? Give me your hand." Zhou Qin reached out. Her hand hesitated in midair, but soon she firmly placed it in Li Yundong's broad and gentle palm. //7854627895541 Chapter 298. Go to Watch Network. Li Yundong held Zhou Qin's soft hand, and all the zhenqi in his body rushed out. Not only did it wrap around him, but it also wrapped around Zhou Qin. The two of them floated in the air. Go to Kanban. 7K. OM/Zhou Qin's eyes suddenly widened. Before she could react, her body felt light, and she was taken out of the balcony by Li Yundong. In less than a few seconds, they flew out of Hongxing New area. The first time Li Yundong had been taken flying by Su Chan, she had asked him to close his eyes. That was because Su Chan's zhenqi was not enough, and her cultivation was limited. She couldn't fly with him when he couldn't control the qi in his body. Li Yundong thought that his zhenqi was strong enough that he could easily control a large copper tripod that weighed thousands of kilograms, let alone Zhou Qin, a slim woman who weighed less than 50 kilograms. Therefore, Li Yundong didn't ask Zhou Qin to close her eyes. Instead, he carefully observed her reaction and expression after flying into the air. Zhou Qin was in the air, and she felt an inexplicable force wrap around her whole body and support her. At first, she was a little nervous and trembled slightly, but after a while, she calmed down and looked at the world under her feet curiously and excitedly with her beautiful eyes. Li Yundong saw that she was born with a big heart and a firm will. She was indeed a good material for cultivation. He nodded in his heart and said, "Do you see that? This is the world of cultivators." Zhou Qin's understanding was extremely high. She thought of something and said, "You mean that the world of cultivators is higher than all living beings, but it can't be separated from all living beings?" Li Yundong looked at her with appreciation and said, "All the women in the world should be jealous of you. You are both beautiful and intelligent. God loves you so much." Zhou Qin smiled slightly, but she thought in her heart, "But I think Su Chan is the woman who should be jealous of the most in the world." Li Yundong didn't know what Zhou Qin was thinking. He said, "You're right. The world of cultivators is indeed like this. The people who lived in this world were often busy with scheming and fighting for power, or with daily necessities. They often did not look up at the sky above their heads. And it's the same for us cultivators. We live in this world, and are affected and restricted by it. At the same time, we are constantly trying to get out of this world." Speaking of this, Li Yundong said with some emotion, "Half a year ago, I was just like you. I never thought that there would be cultivators in the world around me. Those people and things that only exist in movies turned out to be real. I remember that Ziyuan once said, 'The great way is invisible, and the great sound is silent.'" Watch net. 7K. OM/The true Tao is right under our feet. It's just that we usually don't pay attention to it. It's the same in the cultivation world. Li Yundong stared at Zhou Qin with bright eyes and asked very seriously, Zhou Qin, have you thought it through today? Do you really want to cultivate? Zhou Qin was born into a family of officials, and she was born with a subconscious yearning for power and power. However, she was rebellious by nature, and was very disgusted with the restrictions of officialdom. Therefore, she had inadvertently discovered Li Yundong's abnormality and strange power, and thus had a strong curiosity about him. Zhou Qin hated the restrictions of the secular world, but she also admired the strong. That was why she had approached Li Yundong step by step, almost destroyed her family, and finally entered the cultivation world. In the face of Li Yundong's question, Zhou Qin took a deep breath. In the past, she had only wanted to stay by Li Yundong's side and look at him more and talk to him more. Zhou Qin would be very satisfied. But now, for the first time, Zhou Qin felt that she was so curious and eager about cultivation. This desire came from her natural worship and yearning for power, as well as her deep love for Li Yundong and her unswerving desire to follow him. Zhou Qin said solemnly, I want to cultivate. Li Yundong nodded. Although I haven't been cultivating for a long time, I will teach you everything I have learned. I hope that in the future, there will be one more famous female cultivator in the cultivation world. After that, he smiled and continued to fly in the direction of Dongwu City with Zhou Qin. Although Li Yundong's jinqi was magnificent, and he could fly with extremely heavy things, his flying speed was far inferior to that of Zi Yuan and the others. It was not until dawn that he took Zhou Qin back to the Fox Zen school. Before he could land, he saw Su Chan, Zi Yuan, and Ruan Hongling, who had been waiting for a long time, coming up to greet him. Ruan Hongling said sarcastically, I can't imagine that such a powerful cultivator, like you, can't even fly with Yin spirit. You can only fly with your physical body. Don't you know that among the 3 ways of flying, physical flight is the slowest? Li Yundong asked curiously, Oh? Which 3? Ruan Hongling rolled her eyes at him and muttered, Are you kidding me? This kind of guy doesn't even know the 3 ways of flying. But he's so good at fighting. Is there any justice in this world? Zi Yuan, who was standing to one side, said with a smile, The 3 ways of flying are physical flight, Yin spirit or Yang spirit flight, and flying on a magic item. Go to the internet. You can already do the first one. The second one needs to be cultivated to the 6th heaven of Huanying before you can do it. The third one needs a special magic item, such as the Bahuang sword and the Biju sword. The Yin spirit or the Yang spirit controls the magic item, and then the magic item takes you to fly. Among the 3, the first method consumes the most jinqi and is the slowest, but it carries the highest load. The second method is the fastest, but it also consumes jinqi. The third method is only a little slower than the second, but it consumes the least jinqi. Li Yundong nodded and said to Zi Yuan with a smile, Thank you for your teaching, Zhenren Zi Yuan. Now come with me. I'll tell you why the Fox Zen school can't leave Mount Tianlong. As he spoke, he led the group to the secret entrance of the back mountain of the Fox Zen school. Then, he pushed aside the bushes and walked in. When Zi Yuan saw that there was a secret cave in the Fox Zen school, she didn't think it was strange. But when they entered the secret cave, passed through the tunnel, walked into the stone room, lit the candlesticks on the wall, and looked around, they were suddenly moved. Ruan Hongling's eyes widened, and she cried out involuntarily, Heavenly Jindan technique. This was a cultivation technique that had been lost for generations. No wonder you were so powerful in the last fight. Sister Zi Yuan said that you might have cultivated the Heavenly Jindan technique. It turns out to be true. However, Zi Yuan said with a shocked expression, I didn't expect this to be the work of the mystical silver fox. Only then did Ruan Hongling react. Her eyes fell on the last inscription, and she took a deep breath. I was wondering which great cultivator could carve words on such hard granite with his bare hands. It turns out that it's the 9-tailed fox. Oh my God. If the cultivators of other sects find out about this, I'm afraid there will be another bloody battle. Zi Yuan calmed down. She walked to the wall and touched it with her hand. She shook her head and said, She can actually carve so many words on such a hard stone surface. Moreover, judging from the situation of the handwriting, They were all carved in one breath. The cultivation of the mystical silver fox is really terrible. We can't catch up with her. No wonder she was invincible in the world back then. Su Chan said proudly. Of course, the mystical silver fox is the most powerful master in the history of our Fox Zen school. Wan Hongling retorted sarcastically. She's also the most notorious master. Su Chan was so angry that she stamped her feet. You. Seeing that the two of them were about to bicker, Li Jiandong immediately interrupted. Okay, don't be so ungrateful. You went into the treasure mountain and came back empty-handed. Seeing such an important cultivation magic, you still don't think about it. You still have time to bicker. I really admire you. Su Chan and Wan Hongling looked at each other and turned their heads away with a snort. Li Jiandong smiled and said to Zi Yuan, How about it? How much is the heavenly Jindan technique worth? 50 million yuan? Zi Yuan sighed and said, This is a priceless secret manual. It's a pity that it can't be sold. Otherwise, you would have become rich overnight. Li Jiandong smiled and said, Yes, I also know that, so I can only tell you. This heavenly Jindan technique can be regarded as a gift from me to you. How about it? Before Zi Yuan could speak, Wan Hongling rushed to say, You're offering Buddha with borrowed flowers. You're so shameless. You don't have any sincerity at all. Li Jiandong didn't take it seriously and laughed. Zi Yuan said with a smile, Your gift is too heavy. I can't afford it. Wan Hongling said, No, Sister Zi Yuan for him. Before she could finish, Zi Yuan suddenly shouted, Hongling. Wan Hongling was so scared that she shrank back and swallowed the rest of her words. Li Jiandong was stunned and asked, What's wrong? Is there something I don't know? Zi Yuan said lightly, It's nothing. But today, I happened to see the heavenly Jindan technique. Generally, do you want to try the feeling of wandering the world? Li Jiandong asked, What is wandering the world? Zi Yuan said, It's when the yin spirit or the yang spirit travels. Li Jiandong's heart skipped a beat. He knew that Zi Yuan was using a different method to guide his cultivation. He thought for a moment and said with a smile, Well, the last time I practiced the heavenly Jindan technique, I felt that my Naiden seemed to have turned into a small person and then jumped out of my body. However, this feeling didn't last long before it disappeared. Su Chan's eyes widened and she said in surprise, Yundong, you've entered the 6th level of Huanying phase. Zi Yuan also nodded and said, With your cultivation, it's reasonable for you to break through the 5th level of Huanying phase and enter the 6th level of Huanying phase. The thing that jumped out of your body before was your yin spirit. The primary stage of the Huanying phase is the yin spirit leaving the body. When you slowly cultivate the yin spirit in your body to the Yuanying phase, the yin spirit will automatically become the yang spirit. At that time, even if your body is destroyed, you can escape with your life. Li Jiandong was greatly moved when he heard this, and was eager to give it a try. Why don't I try again and see if my yin spirit can go out? Zi Yuan smiled and nodded. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Then, she turned to Wan Hongling and said, The heavenly Jindan technique is a rare Taoist treasure. You can cultivate here, and help me and Li Jiandong protect our bodies. Li Jiandong also told Su Chan to teach Zhou Qin the most basic cultivation methods. And then he sat down cross-legged in the stone cave. Due to the guidance of Zi Yuan's powerful yin qi, the Naiden in Li Jiandong's body quickly turned into a nascent soul and flew out of his body. At this time, Wan Hongling, Su Chan, and Zhou Qin had not yet entered meditation. They were all looking at the yin spirit and yang spirit of Li Jiandong and Zi Yuan. Zi Yuan had already cultivated to the highest Yuanying phase of the 6th level of Huanying phase, and could use the yang spirit. Li Jiandong had just started cultivating in the 6th level of Huanying phase, and could only use his yin spirit. Moreover, his yin spirit was relatively young, and looked like a child about 10 years old. From his appearance, one could vaguely recognize that it was Li Jiandong. When Zhou Qin saw this scene, she couldn't help but widen her eyes. She didn't even dare to breathe. She thought to herself, Will I be able to cultivate to their level one day? When Su Chan and Wan Hongling saw Li Jiandong's Yin spirit fly out with Zi Yuan's Yang spirit, they couldn't help but feel envious and sigh. Wan Hongling thought to herself, when I first met Li Jiandong, he was just a beginner cultivator. His aura was strong, but now, in less than half a year of cultivation, he has reached the 6th level of Huanying phase. His fighting methods are even more powerful. Even Sister Zi Yuan, who has cultivated to the highest level of the 6th level of Huanying phase, is no match for him. His cultivation progress is so fast. If I don't work hard, I'm afraid I won't be able to catch up with him in this life. Su Chan thought to herself, when Yundong first started cultivating, he was far from being a match for me. Now even 10 of me are no match for him. I have to work hard to cultivate, and can't let him leave me behind too much. Otherwise, I can't be with him in the future. //7854627895541. Chapter 299. Go to watch net. After Li Yundong and Zi Yuan went on a mental journey, one Yin spirit and the other Yang spirit floated in the air. Li Yundong felt that he was as light as a feather. With a thought, he could fly thousands of meters away. The speed was far faster than when he was flying with his own body. Go to watch net. 7K. OM/Zi Yuan's Yang spirit was no different from her body, and even the clothes on her body were exactly the same. It was as if one person had been split into two. After watching Li Yundong travel freely in the air for a while, she suddenly asked, do you know what the biggest difference between the Yin spirit and the Yang spirit is? At this time, Li Yundong stopped. He shook his head and said with a smile, although I seem to be very good at fighting now, in fact, I'm still far behind in cultivation. Zhenren Zi Yuan, don't keep me guessing. Please give me some advice. Zi Yuan smiled and waved at Li Yundong. Come with me. The two of them quickly flew to the ground. It was late at night, and they had flown to the suburbs. They were almost in the wilderness, so they were not afraid of being seen. After Zi Yuan landed on the ground, she broke a branch with her hand and played with it in her hand. She smiled and said, try it. Li Yundong smiled and said, what's so difficult about it? As he spoke, he reached out to break the branch in front of him, but as soon as his hand touched the branch, he found that his hand had gone through it. Li Yundong was stunned and said in surprise, I can't touch anything. Zi Yuan nodded and said with a smile, that's right. This is the biggest difference between the Yin spirit and the Yang spirit. Li Yundong smiled and said, isn't the Yin spirit traveling very much like a person's soul leaving their body? Zi Yuan said, you can say that. I used to explain to you what the cultivation of the 5th heaven is about. Today, I will explain to you the cultivation of the 6th heaven of Yuanying. Li Yundong's face was full of seriousness. He formed a palm with one hand and said, please enlighten me, Zhenren Zi Yuan. Zi Yuan was playing with a branch picked from the roadside in her hand. She smiled and said, when a cultivator cultivates to a certain level in the 5th heaven of Shintong, God will begin to prepare the heavenly tribulation, preparing to kill this cultivator. According to the normal rules of cultivation, if a heavenly thunder were to strike someone, regardless of whether they were a perfected golden immortal or a supreme immortal of the 9 heavens, they would definitely die. Watch net. Because no matter how strong the human body is, it is impossible to be stronger than the heavenly thunder. There is only one kind that can withstand the might of the heavenly thunder. Before Zi Yuan could finish speaking, Li Yundong's eyes lit up and he said, I know, it's the Yin spirit or Yang spirit of a person who has gone out. It is the energy body formed by the Niden in your body. However, this energy body is relatively thin and weak, so it can't touch anything. If you use your Yin spirit to touch the heavenly tribulation, then what awaits you will definitely be your Yin spirit being destroyed. From then on, you will become a walking corpse. Only by cultivating the Yin spirit to the Yang spirit realm, this energy body will become vigorous and condensed, and you will be able to withstand the heavenly thunder. You should know that when you really transcend the heavenly thunder tribulation, You have to put your yang spirit in the dark clouds of rolling thunder and lightning and bear countless thunder and lightning. This is called transcending the heavenly tribulation. The primary realm of the sixth heaven is called yuanying. As the name implies, the Niden in your body turns into a baby. You said that when you cultivated the 9 cycles Jindan, your Yin spirit went out of your body. At that moment, the Yin spirit in your body, which had just turned into a baby, went out of your body to see the world. Your current Yin spirit has grown into the appearance of a teenager. This is the intermediate realm of the sixth heaven. Yuanying means that the Yin spirit in your body has begun to slowly take shape. When you slowly cultivate your Yin spirit to become more and more powerful, it will slowly transform into a yang spirit, which means that your energy will become more and more powerful and condensed. You will be able to touch other things and be no different from ordinary people. This means that you have cultivated to the advanced realm of the sixth heaven, yuanying, which is also the yang spirit realm. Although you are better than me in a fight, if we really fight to the death and I release my yang spirit, it will immediately become a situation of 2 against 1. 1-on-1, I am no match for you, but 2 against 1, you are definitely no match for me. At the very least, even if it's 2 against 1, I can't beat you. I can also escape with my yang spirit, find a corner that you can't find at all to hide in, slowly find a good tripod furnace, and then bear the humiliation, and try to make a comeback. Just like Yin Fang, she may not be a match for Lu Yi in a fight, but when her yang spirit escapes, all the cultivators on the field, including Lu Yi, can't stop her at the same time. Those who cultivate to the yuanying realm have already gotten rid of life and death and reincarnation. As long as the yang spirit doesn't die, he can continue to live. He only needs to be reborn. This is the power of the highest realm of yuanying. Hearing this, Li Yundong suddenly understood. It turns out that you still had a trick up your sleeve in the last fight. Cunning, you are really cunning. I must really compare notes with you another day. Ziyuan smiled slightly. There's no need to compare notes. Without the yang spirit, if it's 2 against 1, your Jinqi is so powerful that I'm no match for you. I admit defeat. But I can't beat you, and you can't destroy me because you haven't cultivated to the highest realm of yuanying. If you meet a great cultivator at the supreme power level, you can't beat him, but you can't escape with your yang spirit. If that happens, you won't be able to answer even if you cry for help. Li Yunyang smiled and said, I see. After reaching the Yangshan phase in the sixth heaven, not only can I add a doppelganger to participate in the attack, but I can also give up my physical body and escape with the yang spirit to escape from the enemy's pursuit when necessary. Ziyuan smiled and said, Exactly. Li Yundong asked in confusion. Now that you have cultivated the yang spirit, can't you go through the heavenly tribulation? Ziyuan shook her head and said, No, after cultivators cultivate to the yang spirit phase, they are only free from the cycle of life and death, but they are not free from the control of heaven and earth. They must cultivate their yang spirit to the 7th level of Jinshin before they can face the heavenly thunder. Otherwise, no matter how strong and condensed the yang spirit is, it is impossible for them to withstand the power of the heavenly thunder. Li Yundong exclaimed and said, I remember. Last time when the Fox Zen school was fighting with the major sects, I heard some cultivators from other sects say that no one in the world can cultivate to the Jinshin phase? Ziyuan nodded and then shook her head. Judging from the current cultivation world, that is indeed the case. However, the 6 great sects, Jingyi School, North and South Zen sect, Huayan sect, and other Buddhist cultivation sects have deep roots and hidden dragons and crouching tigers. It is hard to say if there are any seniors who have cultivated for many years who have reached this realm. However, as far as I know, Zhang Tianshishi, the leader of Jingyi School, seems to be close to this realm. Li Yundong thought for a moment and asked, I seem to have heard that only by taking the Diyuan Jindan can one cultivate to this realm. Ziyuan laughed and said, This is only in theory. There are 3 great elixirs in the world. The Tianyuan Fairy Pill, the Diyuan Jindan, and the Rinyuan Jindan. You took the Rinyuan Jindan, which is ranked last, and immediately became a famous cultivator in the world. If you take the Diuanjindan, what kind of realm do you think you will reach? Hearing this, Li Yundong couldn't help but be fascinated. I don't know how to refine the Diuanjindan, Zi Yuan said. The cultivation method of the Diuanjindan has been lost for nearly 500 years. You'd better not think about it. It's better to cultivate step by step. It's better to wear a stone dripping with water. Li Yundong nodded in agreement. While the two of them were talking happily, they suddenly heard a faint shout coming from not far away. Excuse me, is that Li Yundong Jinrenli? Li Yundong and Zi Yuan were shocked. They turned to face the direction of the voice at the same time and shouted warily. Who is it? Li Yundong took a closer look and saw a woman in a long yellow gown standing in the dark night. This woman was beautiful, slender, exquisite, and elegant. If this woman was in normal times, she would be a charming great beauty. But at this time, it was dark and they were in the wilderness. It was obviously not normal for such a beauty to appear here. Zi Yuan's eyes were like torches, and she saw through the woman's true appearance at a glance. She whispered to Li Yundong, "This is a Yin spirit traveling, and the demon qi on her is very strong." Li Yundong shouted coldly, "Who are you? How do you know me?" Although Li Yundong's Yin spirit was traveling, the yang qi on his body was still extremely strong. The woman in yellow didn't dare to approach him from a distance. When she was about 5 meters away from Li Yundong, she said faintly, "Jinrenli, you once saved my husband and my life. Have you forgotten?" Li Yundong was suddenly confused. "When did I save you and your husband?" The woman in yellow looked at Zi Yuan, her eyes full of vigilance, and said softly, "In the West Garden." Li Yundong suddenly understood. Could this be the 2 golden snakes that had been released? Li Yundong looked at her with a face full of doubt and asked, "Why are you looking for me? Aren't you afraid that I'll take you back? Next to me is Zhenren Zi Yuan of the Linggong sect. She is my good friend. If you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to avoid it." The woman in yellow sighed softly and said with tears in her eyes, "My husband and I were originally 2 golden snakes cultivating at the foot of Mount Donghua. A few days ago, my husband heard that the immortal pen and the medicine king tripod were about to be born. So he was moved and said that he wanted to go to the secular world to have a look. I tried hard to persuade him, but he didn't listen, so I had to follow him out of the mountain. But I didn't expect that when we passed through Dongwu City, we would be caught by the bald donkeys of Shiyuan Temple. They insisted that we were evildoers and wanted to force us. Heaven above, my husband and I have been cultivating hard in the mountains for 100 years and have never harmed a human life. I didn't expect that we would suffer such a disaster. Fortunately, Zhenrenli saved us, so we were able to escape." Speaking of this, the woman in yellow bowed down. Li Yundong raised his hand and said, "Since you have escaped, why did you come to me again? I was just lucky that day. I didn't mean to save you. You don't have to thank me." The yellow-clothed woman sobbed and said, "Although we escaped from the tiger's mouth, we couldn't escape from the wolf's claws. These days, we have been besieged by cultivators from several cultivation sections. The new guests tried to rob us of our Naiden. In desperation, I remembered that only Jinrenli had once saved us in the mortal world, and I heard that Jinrenli had saved the Fox Zen school from destruction. What's more, Zhenrenli doesn't discriminate against monsters like us who cultivate with demon bodies. That's why I boldly came here with my Yin spirit to ask for help." Li Yundong asked in a deep voice, "How did you find me?" The woman in yellow said, "I have been wandering around the Fox Zen school until I saw Zhenrenli's aura appear nearby, so I followed." Li Yundong didn't comment and asked again, "You want me to save you? But how do I know if you've done anything outrageous?" The woman in yellow cried and said, "As the saying goes, God has the virtue of cherishing life. My husband and I have never done anything evil. If we have, I hope God will strike us with lightning." Whether it was Buddhism or Taoism, they all believed in karma. So when the woman in yellow made such an oath, Li Yundong believed her a little. However, Zi Yuan said in a low voice, "Li Yundong, it's not that I'm long-winded and pedantic. After all, humans and demons are different. As the saying goes, those who are not of the same race must have different hearts. Not all demons are as innocent and harmless as Su Chan. You have to be careful before making a decision. Zi Yuan's words made Li Yundong hesitate again. For a moment he was in a dilemma. To save or not to save? This was a question worth considering. / 785462789541. Chapter 300. Go to watch net. The yellow-clothed woman saw that Li Yundong was moved at first, but after Zi Yuan's words, he hesitated again. She cried and said, I heard that Jimren Li is a broad-minded and kind-hearted cultivator, so I took the risk to come here to ask for help. I didn't expect that Jimren Li would be like other cultivators. He would rather sit back and watch us, the monsters who have never done anything bad, be bullied and humiliated, and let those of his kind who are full of evil do evil. Go to watch net. 7K. OM. This sentence suddenly moved Li Yundong. He suddenly remembered what he had said when he had met Dorji Tenzin in the kingdom of Tibet. In fact, the most terrible thing in this world is not the demon, nor is it the devil, but the human beings. When people do evil, they are 100 times more vicious than the demons. Therefore, if the demons do good, not only will I not subdue them, but I will also protect them. If the world does evil, not only will I not protect them, but I will also enforce justice on behalf of heaven. Thinking of this, Li Yundong no longer hesitated. He said, You don't have to provoke me with words. Lead the way, and I'll come later. The woman in yellow was overjoyed. She choked with sobs and bowed down. Thank you for saving my life again, Jimren Li. Li Yundong waved his hand and said, You don't have to thank me so early. If what you said is true, I might have to take care of it. But if you tell a lie, maybe you will attract death yourself. The woman in yellow sighed and said, Whether it's true or not, Jimren Li will know when you go. As she said this, her body turned into a yellow light and flew into the air. But she stayed still. Obviously, she was waiting for Li Yundong. Li Yundong turned to look at Zi Yuan and said, This matter started because of me. I thought that Su Chan was trapped in Shiyuan Temple, so I broke in. As a result, I accidentally released these 2 snake demons. If they are really evil monsters, I have the responsibility to catch them again. If they are really innocent and kind people, then I can't tolerate some cultivators with ulterior motives attacking them. Go back to the secret room of the cave, and wait for me. I'll be back soon. Zi Yuan sighed and said, You are really too righteous. You really don't look like a cultivator with a pure heart and few desires. Forget it, I will accompany you once. You have just entered the 6th stage of heaven, and your Yin spirit is still very weak. If someone uses a spell to attack you, you will be easily killed. Let's go, we can take care of each other. Li Yundong was overjoyed. He chuckled and said, I think you are the one who is cold-faced and warm-hearted. You talk tough, but your heart is softer than anyone else. Zi Yuan smiled and said, Let's go. The 2 of them quickly transformed into a streak of cyan light and flew into the sky. Seeing the 2 of them follow, the yellow-clothed woman quickly flew north. In the blink of an eye, they could fly dozens of miles. In less than half an hour, Li Yunyang and Zi Yuan followed the yellow-clothed woman to the ground of Xinbin. They saw that the place where they landed was a jungle deep in the mountains, and there were houses hidden at the foot of the mountain. Watch net. The yellow-clothed woman said, The bodies of my husband and I are hidden in this mountain. Those cultivators who surrounded us are on the other side of the mountain. Please uphold justice, Jimren Li. With that, she burrowed into the mountain and disappeared without a trace. Li Yundong frowned and flew to the top of the mountain. Sure enough, he saw torches on the other side of the mountain and faint voices of people. Zi Yuan, who had followed him up the mountain, couldn't help but frown slightly. It seems to be cultivators from the 6 great sects. Li Yundong said in a deep voice, Let's go and have a look. Zi Yuan nodded. The 2 of them restrained their auras and explored the foot of the mountain. When they were more than 20 meters away, they heard clear voices. Do these two stinky snakes think that we can't do anything to them if they hide in the hole? The people of the Jinshan sect have been in there for 2 hours. Why haven't we seen any movement yet? Ha ha ha. Isn't the Jinshan sect good at the earth escape technique? I'm afraid that this time they will directly escape into the snake's stomach. B****. What are you Donghua sect gloating about? If you have the ability, you can do it yourself. This group of people was noisy, but they heard an old voice in the crowd. Li Yundong looked through the cover of the dense forest and saw Zheng Yuan of the Yin Yang sect of Mount Wuhua standing among the crowd, stroking his beard. Next to him was a tall and beautiful girl who was sleeping. It was Ding Man. As soon as Li Yundong saw Zheng Yuan, he immediately said angrily in a low voice, "This bastard stole Mo Ashi's threaded hairpin of soul traversal from the Fox Zen school under my nose. I'll get it back from him." Zi Yuan advised, "Don't get excited. Listen to what they have to say." Li Yundong suppressed his anger and listened carefully to what Zheng Yuan was saying. Zheng Yuan said, "Fellow Taoists, please calm down and listen to me." Some of the cultivators from the small sects around said, "Senior Zheng, you should uphold justice." "That's right, Senior Zheng. You found the traces of these two snake demons, so you should be the one in charge." The cultivators of the 6 great sects, who had heard the news, shouted one after another, "When did the Yin Yang sect of Mount Wuhua become the master here? Our 6 great sects haven't spoken yet. The Yin Yang sect of Mount Wuhua should stand aside." "That's right, Senior Zheng, you'd better stand aside and rest. Let's see how our 6 great sects will show off." Zheng Yuan heard the noise around him, but he was not angry. He still said in a clear voice, "Fellow Taoists, if we make a racket here, even if we quarrel until the next morning, we won't be able to get anything out of it. Let's go to the internet. 7K. OM. Color. Text. Learn net. Super_speed. More. Why don't we work together and kill these 2 stinky snakes first? It won't be too late to quarrel after that." His words made the other cultivators nod and say, "That makes sense. Let's deal with these 2 stinky snakes first." "That's right. You 6 great sects quarrel all day long and don't respect each other. Are you waiting for you to show off your skills? Forget it. It's good enough that you don't undermine each other. Bastard, which sect are you from? How dare you sow discord?" Li Yundong saw that there were at least 40 to 50 cultivators surrounding the foot of the mountain, and most of them were cultivators from various sects who had participated in the siege of the Fox Zen school. He sneered in his heart and said in a low voice, "Are these guys all here to subdue demons and enforce justice on behalf of heaven? I'm afraid that there are more people who want to take advantage of the situation and steal things." Zi Yuan said lightly, "It's normal for the 6 great sects to have a mix of good and bad. Moreover, these 2 golden snakes are full of treasures. They walk in the secular world and arouse the greed and coveting of cultivators. This is not surprising." Li Yundong sneered. He looked around and said in a low voice, "There are 40 to 50 people here, and there are at least 7 or 8 good cultivators. Zheng Yuan is not easy to deal with. I don't think we can defeat them unless we add in the 2 golden snakes." Zi Yuan immediately shook her head and said, "No, even if you can drive them away like this, in the future, you will definitely be accused of colluding with evildoers and becoming enemies of the 6 great sects. At that time, the 6 great sects will send out all their elites to attack you again. Although you are powerful, it will be difficult for you to fight against 4 hands." Li Yundong snorted and said, "Do you think I'm afraid of them?" Zi Yuan said, "Don't underestimate the 6 great sects. Although the 6 great sects are still very depressed, they have been spreading around for thousands of years. No one knows how deep their family background is. Even our Jingyi school doesn't dare to fall out with them. Last time, when the 6 great sects besieged the Fox Zen school, most of the people who came were the experts of the younger generation. The real masters did not come. If you make them angry, they will rush over. Even the Jingyi school will not be able to withstand it." Zi Yuan paused for a moment before continuing. "Most importantly, it's not suitable for you and me to show up directly. We just need to drive them away." Li Yundong asked, "How can we drive away these greedy guys if we don't show up?" The corners of Zi Yuan's mouth curled up, revealing a confident smile. Golden snakes are very powerful monsters. Even if they don't transform into human form, they are still very strong without using magic. And cultivators have a special characteristic. That is, they don't dare to use magic and magical items during thunderstorms for fear of attracting divine punishment. Therefore, as long as I can summon a thunderstorm, these cultivators will most likely not dare to use magic and magical items. I believe that if these two golden snakes are not stupid, they should immediately jump out and drive these cultivators away. Li Yundong asked curiously, "You can also summon wind and rain? How come I've never seen you use such a powerful magic before?" Zi Yuan smiled and said, "When Zhuge Liang asked for the east wind, he did it for several days in a row. It can be seen that if this kind of magic does not borrow the power of a magical item, it will take an extremely long time to cast. If I want to cast the magic, it will take a lot of time, at least an hour, and no one can disturb me in the middle. Otherwise, all my efforts will be in vain." Li Yundong said decisively, "Then hurry up and cast the magic. I'll protect you." Zi Yuan nodded and sat down cross-legged. She pinched her fingers together and closed her eyes. Soon, she entered a meditative state. Li Yundong felt that after Zi Yuan entered a meditative state, her whole body suddenly emitted a gentle force. Although this force was not very strong or turbulent, it was like a moisturizing spring rain. It seeped into the ground bit by bit and continued to spread. After a while, Li Yundong found that the humidity on the ground was getting heavier and heavier, and the dew on the leaves in the forest was also accumulating. Li Yundong's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly understood. It turned out that the principle of this magic was to urge the moisture on the ground to rise into the air, thereby increasing the moisture in the clouds and causing a thunderstorm. As he was thinking about it, he saw a trace of white qi constantly rising from the ground and curling up into the air. This lasted for about half an hour. Slowly, Li Yundong felt a breeze begin to blow his cheeks. His heart skipped a beat. "It's windy." When the wind moved, the clouds moved, the rain moved, and when the wind moved, thunder and lightning moved together. At this time, Zheng Yuan and the other cultivators of various cultivation sects were blocking in front of the cave in the mountain, discussing what kind of magic they should use to deal with the two stinky snakes. They did not notice the abnormality around them at all. Seeing that they were discussing endlessly, one of the cultivators said impatiently, "You guys are talking endlessly here. Maybe the two stinky snakes have already run away." Immediately, a cultivator sneered and said, "Don't be silly. Their own spirits can escape, but their physical bodies can't. Once their physical bodies move, how can so many cultivators not find them?" At this time, Zheng Yuan said loudly, "Fellow Taoists, if we continue to discuss like this, we don't know when it will end. I think we should take out our powerful magical weapons. If we have any skills, we can just go to the entrance of the snake cave. What do you think?" When the other cultivators heard this, they all said, "That's a good idea." However, there were also those who disagreed and said, "It's good, but when we catch these two stinky snakes, how are we going to divide the treasures?" Zheng Yuan pondered for a while and said, "It won't be too late for us to fight then. If we fight now, won't these two stinky snakes take advantage of the situation?" When the cultivators heard this, they thought that there was no other good way, so they said one after another, "Okay, let's do it this way." For a moment, these cultivators all took out their powerful magical weapons and bombarded the entrance of a secret stone cave. The cave was only the size of a basketball, but when these magical weapons hit it, a golden halo shield wall appeared, as if a solid and hard boundary was blocking these cultivators from invading. Li Yundong saw that the colorful magical weapons at the foot of the mountain took turns to bombard the entrance of the cave. The golden boundary was getting weaker and weaker, and it was obvious that it couldn't hold on any longer. Li Yundong felt that something was wrong, but seeing that Zi Yuan had been casting spells for a long time, he hesitated whether he should go out and stop them. But at this time Ding Nan, who had been doing nothing and watching from the sidelines, suddenly felt a drop of water drip on her face. She couldn't help raising her head, touching the water stain on her cheek, and asked curiously, "It's raining?" Hearing this, Zheng Yuan said in surprise, "It's raining." He twitched his sinuses and immediately became vigilant. No, the air wasn't so wet just now. Could it be that someone is casting spells nearby? Zheng Yuan shouted loudly, "Fellow Taoists, someone is casting spells nearby, trying to summon wind and thunder. Everyone look around and see if anyone is casting spells. If you find them, kill them immediately." After he shouted, a cultivator immediately shouted, "Okay, let's take a look around." Hearing this, Li Yundong no longer hesitated. He immediately jumped into the field and shouted, "Stop! //7854627895541. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.